Chapter 797. When the roar of the helicopter's rotor sounded, Qin Weibai frowned slightly and opened her eyes. The light in the luxurious room had become dark. The hazy moonlight shone through the window, like a layer of gauze. Qin Weibai sat up from the bed, shook her head gently and got up to the window. This was the highest place in the desert prison with a wide view. Looking out from here, the traces of the helicopter leaving were still clear. The yellow sand rolled up slowly fell from the sky with a large amount of smoke and dust. The helicopter had flown far away, and only the signal lights kept flashing, looking a little determined. Another helicopter was still parked in front of the desert prison, and it seemed very lonely. Qin Weibai's eyes gradually became clear. She turned around, found a bathrobe and walked into the bathroom to take a shower. When she came out again, she had become the calm patriarch of the Lin clan. She dried her hair and walked out of the dormitory. Outside the dormitory, a plump and enchanting young woman was walking over. When she saw Qin Weibai, she subconsciously paused and then gently bowed and said, "Madam." Qin Weibai nodded. "Has the head of state left?" "He just left." The young woman whispered. "How was the talk?" Qin Weibai walked to the conference room and asked casually. She didn't expect to get any answer, but she didn't expect to hear the content. "I don't know the details, but His Highness and the Prime Minister seem to have quarreled, and their words were very fierce," the young woman said with trepidation. She could appear here not because she had any special ability, but because she was Xiao Mahai's sister. Because her appearance and figure were good enough, and because her charm and temperament were tempting enough. In the end, she was just an ordinary woman. She knew that Li Tianlan was a big shot, but for her, there was no big shot more impactful than the president and the prime minister. An hour ago, when she went to the conference room to deliver fruit, she clearly heard the quarrel in the conference room. On the news broadcast, the voice of the prime minister, who had always been gentle, was loud and angry. Li Tianlan was tit for tat and did not give in at all. The young woman finally understood how strong the young man whose brother had been flattering was. But when she thought of his opponent, the young woman inevitably felt a little uneasy. Qin Weibai paused and then continued to move forward. The two figures passed by the lounge. Wang, patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai Xingxiao, was still sitting there, neither fast nor slow, neither arrogant nor impatient. It seemed that he could sit there until the end of time. Qin Weibai did not stop and walked toward the conference room. Xiao Mahai, who had been guarding here, silently stepped back when he saw Qin Weibai. He lowered his head respectfully. Qin Weibai appreciated it a little. She wasn't admiring Xiao Mahai's attitude towards her. She admired Xiao Mahai's attitude towards Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing. The ridiculously sumptuous banquet at noon had proven this point. But now, Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing left the desert prison, but Xiao Mahai still stood there, not even sending them off. This was undoubtedly a kind of attitude. This was not the so-called proof of allegiance. It was a true attitude. Loyal and devoted. In terms of strength and ability, Xiao Mahai wasn't bad. Plus, he was the center of attention. This person could be used. "You've worked hard. Have you eaten?" Qin Weibai stopped and greeted Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai was obviously stunned for a moment and seemed a little flattered. He scratched his head and smiled honestly. "What would you like to eat, madam?" "Something light. Don't be too extravagant. You go and prepare. We'll have a meal together later and have a drink with His Highness." Qin Weibai's smile was faint and just right. "Okay, got it." Xiao Mahai nodded and rushed straight to the kitchen. Qin Weibai looked at his back and smiled. Then she pushed the door open and walked into the conference room. The conference room was filled with smoke. Li Tianlan sat alone in the chair, relaxed, holding a cigarette and expressionless. He didn't even notice Qin Weibai coming in. "What are you thinking about? Why are you so absorbed?" Qin Weibai walked over and stood behind him. She reached out and rubbed his shoulders. Li Tianlan put out the cigarette but leaned back and took a long breath. He shook his head and said, "I'm not thinking about anything. I just think it's good to be alone for a while." "Do you think I'm bothering you?" Qin Weibai tilted her head and gently raised the corner of her mouth. Li Tianlan smiled and patted the soft little hand on his shoulder. "How was the talk?" Qin Weibai asked. "It's neither good nor bad. They want me to have a clear attitude." Li Tianlan shook his head and said, "But I didn't make a clear statement." This result was not good for either Li Tianlan or the parliament. At best, it was not the worst. Before the new result appeared, both sides could reluctantly accept it, but that was all. Therefore, in the end, this negotiation was more or less on bad terms, but not to the extent of falling out. Zhongzhou state might reduce its assistance to Tiannan because of Li Tianlan's current attitude. But for Xinyuan City, which was already on the right track, it would not have much impact. And Li Tianlan also needed some time to think about it before he could make up his mind. Haven't you decided yet? Qin Weibai asked softly. It's easier said than done. Li Tianlan shook his head. Zhongzhou state had shown enough sincerity. Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing had analyzed all kinds of possibilities for him. As long as he was willing, Emperor Dong's palace could completely replace Kunlun City in 2 or 3 years. This talk was very in-depth. Kunlun City. Tiannan. If the two sides were put on a scale, the weight was almost the same, but the position was different. It was impossible to say who was higher or lower. Li Tianlan really didn't know how to choose for a moment. Accepting the olive branch of Zhongzhou state and facing the possible suppression of the parliament in a few years, or joining hands with Beihai to play against the parliament, the risk was the same. The key was what Li Tianlan did. Such a choice would affect Li Tianlan, Emperor Dong's palace, Xinyuan City, and even the fate of the Li family for many years to come. Li Tianlan was not indecisive, but this matter really needed to be cautious. The promise I made was that I would not join hands with the Wang family of Beihai for the time being. Li Tianlan said softly. He would not join hands with the Wang family of Beihai for the time being. The focus of this sentence was not the second half. It was temporary. No one knew how long this temporary would last. Qin Weibai understood and said softly, "You want to see the trump card of the Wang family of Beihai?" Li Tianlan's temporary could be a long time or a short time. Now that all the superpowers seemed to be targeting the Wang family of Beihai, the parliament of Zhongzhou state understood that Li Tianlan would stand by for the time being and would definitely speed up the action against the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan wanted to see what the Wang family of Beihai would do to deal with this situation, see what trump card they had, and then decide whether to cooperate with them. This was completely understandable. More than that, Li Tianlan smiled and said, "It depends on the offer of the Wang family of Beihai." Chapter 798. The cabin that was completely shrouded in darkness emitted a faint light. The faint light illuminated Qin Fangqing's face into an extremely gloomy green color, looking gloomy and terrifying. The atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Li Huaqing sat opposite Qin Fangqing, looking in the direction of the desert prison, narrowing his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. "Who?" With a long sigh, Qin Fangqing's body relaxed slightly, and his complexion gradually returned to normal. Li Huaqing smiled and said in a calm voice, "Don't mind him. Li Tianlan is not an ordinary young man, neither is Wang Xingxiao." Qin Fangqing clenched his teeth and let out a muffled snort, not saying anything. Today's trip to the desert could be said to be the biggest stain in his political career. He had been directly contradicted by two young people, one discussing his life and death, and the other directly questioning his standpoint. Qin Fangqing had wanted to fall out with them more than once, but in the end he had endured it. Because he couldn't move Li Tianlan. Wang Xingxiao couldn't move either. At the very least, today in the desert, in a relatively private setting, when facing those two youngsters, if they decided not to give him face, he could only suffer. The other party was not an ordinary young man. Of the two of them, one was meditating in prison. One carried the Wang family on his back and moved forward with difficulty. This pair of young people was no longer the arrogant and domineering playboys who relied on their elders. Their power and ability had already enabled them to stand at the peak of Zhongzhou state. Even in the face of him, the prime minister, they could maintain a fairly detached and calm attitude. Qin Fangqing closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said with a self-deprecating smile, "I'm old. It's fine if some grievances are beneficial to the bigger picture." Li Huaqing thought for a while and said softly. Qin Fangqing nodded and did not speak. He could understand the meaning of these words, and even he himself was such a person. He was indeed a prime minister who put the interests of Zhongzhou state above everything else. As the number 2 figure in Zhongzhou state and the leader of the prince group, not everyone had the courage to decisively kill a member of his group. Qin Fangqing had done this before. He might have his own selfish motives, but he had never been ambiguous about the major issues of right and wrong for so many years. However, as time passed, especially during this period of time, his mentality gradually became unbalanced. That is, coming after a long time in power, the reluctance, anxiety, and apprehension of losing power. The game between Zhongzhou state and Beihai had reached a critical moment. The negotiation between the parliament and Li Tianlan had also reached a critical moment. All kinds of things, constantly changing situations, surging undercurrents, rising winds and scudding clouds. But in the end it was still because of this time next year. It was the general election of Zhongzhou state. This is the real focus. Everything could come to an end with this change. At the very least there would be peace for a long time. From this year to next, it would be the last year of Chen Fangqing's term. Chen Fangqing really wanted to do something because compared to Li Huaqing, who was likely to be re-elected next year, he really didn't have much time, especially Li Tianlan. It could even be said that he was extremely eager to make Li Tianlan agree to their conditions. Chen Fangqing dreamed of tying such a heavenly son who could serve Zhongzhou state for decades to Zhongzhou state. It was no exaggeration to say that if Li Tianlan could agree to their conditions today, then Chen Fangqing would be the real main force when Kunlun City was taken over by Emperor Dong's palace. Attacking Beihai and trapping Li Tianlan were Chen Fangqing's biggest demands in the coming year. If he did this well, it would be enough to lay the foundation for the pattern of Zhongzhou state in the next few decades. After next year, Chen Fangqing shook his head and hesitated to speak. Li Huaqing sighed slightly and there was bitterness in his eyes. Next year would be Chen Fangqing's 10th year in office. For Dongqing Wudi this was his 5th year in office. With Dongqing Wudi's prestige and achievements in the military of Zhongzhou state, no one could stop his re-election unless there was a great accident. He was a member of the parliament of Zhongzhou state, a director, and the standing minister of the army headquarters. Now, after the president and the prime minister, Dongqing Wudi ranked 3rd. After next year when Chen Fangqing retired, the new prime minister could not be ahead of Dongqing Wudi. At that time, Dongqing Wudi would become the number 2 figure in Zhongzhou state, ranking second only to Li Huaqing. Because of the particularity of the military, the retirement age of the main leaders of the army headquarters could be appropriately relaxed. Li Huaqing would inevitably retire in the next 5 years, but Dongqing Wudi might not. This meant that Dongqing Wudi would become stronger than he was now after next year, and the giant group would get through the period of weakness after the reshuffle more quickly. The first was the giant group. The position of the head of the cabinet had not been decided yet. This position had even become the fiercest battlefield for all parties. The prince group, the giant group, and the academics were all ambitious and had strong figures. If there had been no accident in Beihai, this position should have belonged to Wen Xiyuan, the speaker of Beihai. Now, although Wen Xiyuan was in a precarious situation, it could not be said that he had no competition for this position. As a result, the situation became more complicated. If it was the academics who finally got this position, it would be okay. Li Huaqing and the new prime minister could completely check and balance Dongqing Wudi. But with Li Huaqing's retention, the academics had little chance, and it was difficult for the one from the giant group to form a real tacit understanding with Li Huaqing. If this position fell into the hands of the giant group or the southeast group, it would be a nightmare. Then Li Huaqing would even face a more difficult situation than now. Shangwang Qinglei? Chen Fangqing pondered for a long time before asking tentatively. Li Huaqing finally stopped hiding his bitter smile and shook his head slightly. He's not you. Chen Fangqing was silent. Wang Qinglei's current qualifications were sufficient. But he was not Chen Fangqing. That was to say, he was not willing to take this position. His goal was very clear, which was the position of the president 5 years later. How could he give up that position to be the prime minister 5 years in advance? Li Tianlan is the key. Chen Fangqing sighed softly. What a pity. If he could tie Li Tianlan down, he could really change a lot of things. But Li Tianlan did not say anything. It's not necessarily a bad thing that he didn't say anything. Li Huaqing said quietly, at least we still have time to operate now. I just don't know how much the Wang family of Beihai will offer. Wang Yuetong? Chen Fangqing suddenly asked. Still can't find her. Li Huaqing's eyes narrowed. No matter how tacit they were, this question was a little too sensitive. He took a deep look at Chen Fangqing and shook his head. I've looked for her, but there's no news. The biggest price of the Wang family of Beihai is probably Wang Yuetong. Chen Fangqing lowered his head and said slowly. A very sharp killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 799. When the sky just brightened, Wang Xingxiao, who had meditated all night, opened his eyes. Uninvited, he naturally stayed in prison for a night. At dinner yesterday, a prison guard brought him some food for dishes and a soup, neither good nor bad. Then no one paid attention to the new patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. No one arranged a room for him. The lounge became his guest room. Wang Xingxiao was calm, as if he didn't feel the slightest shame of being ignored. He just waited quietly, waiting for Li Tianlan to meet him. The palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace and the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. The superiority of the two identities was no longer important here. What was important was that Wang Xingxiao needed Li Tianlan's help, so he had to be humble. Wang Xingxiao had enough psychological preparation on the way here. At breakfast, the prison guard brought the standard prison breakfast. Since he was here, Wang Xingxiao ate some, then closed his eyes to rest, ready for the next negotiation. The morning passed quickly. At lunch, Xiao Mahai, the warden of Desert Prison, finally came to the door of the lounge. He smiled calmly and politely. "Mr. Wang, His Highness invites you to have lunch with him." "Okay." Wang Xingxiao smiled and thanked Xiao Mahai politely. Xiao Mahai turned and led the way. There was a very exquisite dining hall in the prison that didn't have much spare space. It was not far from the dormitory. When he approached the dining hall, Wang Xingxiao saw Xiao Qing and several prison guards who were busy. They were bringing extremely exquisite dishes into the dining hall, and a plump and beautiful young woman was holding a bottle of good wine that hadn't been opened yet as she walked over. Wang Xingxiao glanced at Xiao Mahai and suddenly felt a little emotional. He chuckled and said, "I didn't expect General to find the most suitable path for yourself here. In the future, when the palace lord leaves the prison, whether he takes you with him or puts you elsewhere, General can be said to have a high position in the future. I congratulate General in advance." Xiao Mahai smiled calmly and said in a flat tone, "I'll follow His Highness's arrangement. It doesn't matter if I stay here for a few more years." Wang Xingxiao glanced at him, nodded, and pushed open the door of the dining room. Li Tianlan sat in the main seat facing the door, facing a table full of dishes, and kept eating, not waiting for Wang Xingxiao to sit down. He looked relaxed and casual. Wang Xingxiao remained calm, but his eyes had become extremely solemn. "Sit." Li Tianlan waved his hand casually and continued eating. His eating speed was very fast, but it did not ruin his image. It was not the kind of person who would devour everything in one bite. Instead, it was a kind of speed or even a unique sense of rhythm. It was fast, precise, and meticulous. Wang Xingxiao sat down opposite him, looked at him, and did not speak for a while. "What do you want to talk to me about?" Li Tianlan was eating, but his voice was still clear and stable. Wang Xingxiao didn't seem to expect that the carefully prepared negotiation would turn out like this. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, "I hope Beihai can reach a comprehensive strategic cooperation with Emperor Dong's palace." "Reason?" Li Tianlan asked. "I've already told Patriarch Qin the reason yesterday." Wang Xingxiao paused. In fact, when he walked into the restaurant and did not see Qin Weibai, his heart had already sunk slightly. Li Tianlan did not speak. Wang Xingxiao continued, "The current development model of Emperor Dong's palace is somewhat similar to that of Beihai province, but the difference is that Emperor Dong's palace is still Emperor Dong's palace, and Xinyuan City can't represent Tianan for the time being. You still have a long way to go to integrate Emperor Dong's palace and Xinyuan City and annex Tianan. I don't know if you have read the history of Beihai, but I can responsibly tell you that this process will not be smooth, and it will not be smooth. If you are willing to cooperate with Beihai, Beihai is willing to give you enough support. In 10 or 20 years, Beihai province and the Wang family of Beihai will be the future Emperor Dong's palace and Tianan. Zhongzhou state will only choose to wait and see if the two forces reach a new balance." He looked at Li Tianlan and solemnly said, "This is good for both of us." "That's not what I want to hear." Li Tianlan paused and looked at Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows. "Talk about the situation, the future, the balance, and the reason. Why do you say this? It's obvious. If you say it, I'll understand it. If you don't say it, I'll understand it. So it's better not to say it." He lowered his head and sped up his eating. He said blandly, "If the parliament wants to cooperate with me, I only need to nod, and I can quickly replace Kunlun City and become the new god of war of Zhongzhou state. Tianan will still be the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace. This is the price they offered. So, you don't have to analyze all kinds of possibilities. Why don't you just tell me what you can give me?" Wang Xingxiao's pupils contracted slightly for a moment. He had already guessed that Zhongzhou state might replace Kunlun City with Emperor Dong's palace, but he did not expect Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing to be so decisive. He picked up the wine glass in front of him and took a sip. He said in a low voice, "What Zhongzhou state currently gives to Tianan with the strength of Beihai, I can also give you some weapons and armaments. Although the models are different, there won't be any difference in performance. In terms of connections, we can also build a real network for you and Kunlun City." Li Tianlan looked at Wang Xingxiao and said blandly, "This is what Zhongzhou state can give me. Can you also give it to me?" Wang Xingxiao was silent for a long time. I can't give you Kunlun City, he said slowly, but I can give you Tianan. As long as we reach an agreement, after the Wang family of Beihai temporarily stabilizes the situation, I can help Emperor Dong's palace take over everything in Tianan. This is the price I can offer. His thoughts gradually became clear. Zhongzhou State gives you Kunlun City because it wants you to return to the old path of the Li family and protect Zhongzhou State. I don't deny the glory and height of the Li family in those days, but compared with Beihai, such a development model has too many restrictions. The Li family's foundation is in Zhongzhou State, but it can never represent Zhongzhou State. I suggest you choose another path, the path of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai doesn't need to represent Zhongzhou State, but no one is qualified to represent Beihai except us. Tianan can be the Tianan of Zhongzhou State, but first of all, it should be your Tianan first. Not your Tianan, but first of all, it should be the Tianan of Zhongzhou State. The two are different, very different. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and nodded. Very convincing. If we cooperate, what do you need me to do? Wang Xingxiao looked at Li Tianlan quietly. After a long time he suddenly asked, why don't you tell me what you can do if we cooperate? Li Tianlan glanced at him and slowly drank a glass of wine. The chaos of Beihai is around the corner, he said softly. Wang Xingxiao's eyes narrowed and he nodded. It's obvious. I can't go to Beihai when it's the most chaotic. I have to stay here. I have to stay in the desert prison. This is what I promised the council. Li Tianlan said slowly, under such circumstances, how do you want me to help you? Chapter 800. In this case, how do you want me to help you? This question was very interesting. It seemed to be a refusal, but it also seemed to be meaningful. Wang Xingxiao was silent for a while and then chuckled. His whole body slowly relaxed and he looked a little presumptuous and casual. Your promise to the parliament is meaningless, Wang Xingxiao said quietly. Li Tianlan's eyes did not change and he said indifferently, go on. You're not stupid and you're not stupid either. Even if you're not being considerate, Chairman Qin will help you think of everything. Wang Xingxiao said, the parliament hopes that you will go to Beihai province to clean up the mess when or after the chaos in Beihai. But you promised them that you will not go to Beihai. You refused their request for cooperation. At least you never agreed. You stay in the desert prison and seem to be neutral. You don't want to get involved in this matter, but what good is it for you? Li Tianlan lowered his head and ate without saying a word. The Wang family of Beihai is in a bad situation now, but how good can Emperor Dong's palace be? It seems to be developing rapidly, but you can't see the crisis behind it. I can be sure that the future development of Shenyuan City will not be smooth. Now the large amount of assistance provided by Zhongzhou State is based on the situation that everything is still under their control. As you leave the desert prison, Emperor Dong's palace will develop rapidly, and after you want to turn Emperor Dong's palace into another Beihai, Zhongzhou State's suppression will follow. Under such circumstances, you didn't agree to cooperate with the parliament. It seems to be neutral, but it will also make the parliament reduce its support for you. You haven't completely finalized the cooperation with Zhongzhou State, and you can't get the support of the Wang family of Beihai. It seems to be neutral, but in fact it doesn't please either side. You won't do this kind of stupid thing and Qin Weibai won't do it either. Li Tianlan still did not say a word. So I'm very happy. Wang Xingxiao said quietly, I'm very happy that you can make such a promise to Zhongzhou State. Because such a promise, in my opinion, means that you have decided to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. You may not leave the prison, but I can be sure that you have enough power to affect the chaos of the Wang family of Beihai. So, we have a good cooperation? Li Tianlan put down the bowl and chopsticks, wiped his mouth with a tissue and raised his eyes. Are you done? Wang Xingxiao narrowed his eyes and looked straight into Li Tianlan's eyes. It's a good idea, but it's all wrong. Li Tianlan smiled. I'm not as complicated as you think and I'm not as determined as you think. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think what's there to be afraid of. I didn't completely reject Zhongzhou State. I just left some leeway. It's not that I've decided to cooperate with you. His Highness, God of War, Dong Huang, Heavenly Son, they're all bullshit. After all, I'm also a mortal and I'll hesitate. Tianan is good and so is Kunlun City. My choice is likely to affect the path of Emperor Dong's palace for many years to come. I haven't made up my mind, so I left some leeway for both sides. Zhongzhou State can give me a lot of benefits. I see you just to give you a chance to persuade me. Otherwise, if I go to Zhongzhou State to talk about cooperation now, the President and the Prime Minister will welcome me 100%, and Zhongzhou State's aid to Tiannan will also be greatly increased. Li Tianlan leaned forward slightly, knocked on the table in front of him and looked at Wang Shengxiao. There may be a crisis behind Emperor Dong's palace, but it's not impossible to solve. It's just another path, the same glory. I don't need you to tell me which path is better. I have my own judgment. So, from your standpoint, say what you want to say. We can talk, but you should restrain your confidence. Wang Xingxiao sat opposite Li Tianlan and was silent for a long time. Li Tianlan didn't urge him. Wang Xingxiao knew very well that Li Tianlan was waiting for his offer. Even he only had one chance to make an offer. Wang Xingxiao pondered and didn't know what to say for a moment. This was the most critical part of the negotiation. In these few minutes, he had to offer a price that satisfied Li Tianlan once and for all. If it worked, they would have a happy cooperation. If it didn't work, they would drift apart. The pressure was indeed on Wang Xingxiao, because both Tiannan and Kunlun City were good. Regardless of what Li Tianlan thought in his heart, at least the fact was clear that he did have another choice that could be equally glorious. If you stay in the desert prison, what can you do for Beihai when the chaos breaks out in Beihai? Wang Xingxiao asked slowly after pondering for a long time. This kind of cooperation might be long-term, but in the short-term crisis, what could Li Tianlan do to make him think about how to offer a price? I can do a lot of things. Li Tianlan played with the wine glass in his hand and said casually, for example, I may be able to give you some of the information you need most now. The giant group can also help you resist some of the pressure from Zhongzhou State. In short, I can do what you need me to do and what you want me to do, provided that you make me feel that it's worth it. Wang Xingxiao's pupils suddenly contracted for a moment. What you need me to do? What you want me to do? I can do it? He savored this sentence carefully, and his face gradually turned a little pale. Really? He really needed the information about Li Tianlan and Samsara Palace. He also needed the support of the giant group very much. But in the chaos, what he needed most was Li Tianlan's combat capability. Li Tianlan was in the desert, thousands of miles away from Beihai. How could his combat capability be reflected? Wang Xingxiao didn't believe that Li Tianlan's sword light could cross thousands of miles to fight against an invincible realm expert. He was no longer a chosen one but an immortal. Unless he directly tore up the promise with the parliament of Zhongzhou State after agreeing to cooperate. Doing so would not only damage Li Tianlan's reputation, but it would also be too intense. It depends on you, Li Tianlan said blandly. What exactly should I do? Wang Xingxiao asked. Li Tianlan looked up at him. He didn't say anything. Wang Xingxiao gradually understood. He narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then said solemnly, everything I just said can be counted as my conditions. I still hold the same view. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai may be each other's opponents, but they should also be each other's allies. You, me, and Zhongzhou State all need a balance. If you are willing to cooperate, the Wang family of Beihai is willing to do its best to help you take down Tiannan and give you most of the technology and armaments you want. In addition, Beihai also needs the cooperation of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. Cooperate with what? Cooperate with us to find our new patriarch. Wang Xingxiao said word by word. His voice was a little bitter. New patriarch? Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. Wang Yuetong. Wang Xingxiao looked at the sumptuous table in front of him, and his voice was a little faint. Compared with me, my sister is more qualified to lead the current Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan was silent for a moment. Is this condition enough? Wang Xingxiao stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and asked slowly. One more thing. Li Tianlan stood up and looked down at Wang Xingxiao. Go ahead. Wang Xingxiao nodded. Li Tianlan took a deep look at him and walked to the door of the restaurant. When he was about to walk out of the restaurant, he paused and said calmly, I want the coldness of 9 states. Chapter 801. The helicopter that stayed outside the prison for a night finally left slowly. The desert returned to peace. But Xiao Mahai, who witnessed all this, felt unprecedentedly restless. He personally sent Wang Xingxiao out of the prison and watched him get on the helicopter. He watched the helicopter fly farther and farther away, turning into a small black spot under the scorching sun and finally disappearing completely. This was Li Tianlan's order. But when Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing left last night, Li Tianlan did not order him to send them off. Did this mean that His Highness had made a choice between Beihai and Zhongzhou State? The flying yellow sand slowly fell from the sky. Xiao Mahai slowly turned around and walked into the prison. Beihai, Zhongzhou State. He knew everything that was happening in the outside world. Although his position was awkward, his identity and status were there. In the entire Zhongzhou state, how many officers at the level of lieutenant general could there be? So he could see some things clearly. But Xiao Mahai couldn't understand Li Tianlan's choice. It was not doubt, but he really couldn't understand. He was not qualified to get in touch with the inside information and the trend of the situation. Naturally, he wouldn't know why choosing Beihai was better than choosing Zhongzhou state. He didn't understand these, but he knew very well that Li Tianlan, Wang Xingxiao, Dongqing Wudi, Li Huaqing, Qin Fangqing, the young and old people standing at the top of the 6 groups in Zhongzhou state had begun to build a magnificent stage. There was bound to be a place for him on this stage. Xiao Mahai smiled contentedly. When he was about to enter the prison gate, he turned around and looked at the blazing sun outside. This world. In another year it would be the era of Donghuang. Everyone in Emperor Dong's palace would stand on this stage. If he had a choice, Xiao Mahai still wanted to stand by Li Tianlan's side. He didn't stay here. He turned around and strode into the prison. In the dining room, Li Tianlan's meal was not over yet. The dishes on the table were almost wiped out. Li Tianlan lowered his head and slowly stirred the thick soup in front of him. He left. Seeing Xiao Mahai come in, Li Tianlan asked softly. Yes. Xiao Mahai nodded and said, it seems that he was satisfied when he left. I'm satisfied too. A voice rang out abruptly. Xiao Mahai turned his head subconsciously. In her sight, Li Tianlan's mobile phone was on the dining table and the screen was on. A handsome middle-aged man with an unusually sharp aura was sitting quietly in his seat. Looking at his background, it seemed that he was in a ward. Xiao Mahai took a closer look. The person on the phone looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He was handsome and could even be said to be a real beauty. However, this person's aura was too strong. It was sharp, heavy, and unpredictable, so much so that people could not help but admire him. Subconsciously ignoring his appearance, he sat quietly in his seat and looked at Xiao Mahai. His smile was light, but it revealed an indescribable confidence and majesty. This kind of bearing was indescribable, but it was unforgettable. Xiao Mahai opened his mouth. Of course he knew the man in the phone. Now in the entire Zhongzhou state, even if people of a certain status had not seen him, they must have heard of his name. But when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Let me introduce myself, General Xiao. I'm a holy disciple, Wei Kunlun. In the phone, holy disciple's gentle and generous voice sounded, currently I'm Li Tianlan's deputy. Your Excellency, Deputy Palace Master. Xiao Mahai bowed slightly. He never minded being humble to the people around Li Tianlan. I've heard a lot about you. You're welcome, General. You've been with His Highness for so long, and His Highness is very satisfied with you. Maybe in a year or two when you come out of prison I'll have to call you leader. Holy disciple laughed and said, guess what His Highness just talked to me about? Xiao Mahai subconsciously turned his head and glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan lowered his head and drank his soup calmly. Xiao Mahai wisely said nothing. His Highness talked to me about several positions. There will probably be changes in the army headquarters next year. Secretary General Bai will be promoted to the parliament, and the position of Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters will be vacant. Minister Dongqing will definitely take it. In addition, Marshal Yi will probably go further next year, and he will also have to give up the position of General Staff Headquarters. This position is very sensitive. The Border Control Corps has also made some big moves recently. They are all old subordinates of Minister Dongqing and he knows them very well. Minister Dongqing plans to move them in the near future. Thunder God is probably going to move. The Blood Battalion is close to Tiannan, and this position will also be vacant. In the Navy, the male general is probably going to be transferred and the adjustment is not small. Xiao Mahai listened to all this with his mouth agape. Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, Chief of General Staff, Commander of the Blood Battalion and Commander of the Navy. 4 positions. And they were 4 positions of terrifying value. 2 of them were at the peak of lieutenant generals, and they could even be promoted to admiral. And the other 2 were real admirals, especially the second one. If he did well, he might even become a marshal. What did this mean? Well, Xiao Mahai opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. These 4 positions are more suitable. You choose one. Li Tianlan said slowly, you can choose whatever you want, but the General Staff Headquarters is a little difficult. You don't have enough experience, but now there is still time, so you can start. The Chief of the General Staff of Zhongzhou State. This was definitely the military general at the peak of Zhongzhou State. Xiao Mahai's heart beat fiercely a few times. He did think that following Li Tianlan would change his current embarrassing situation. But he never dreamed that this change would be so drastic. 4 positions. No matter which one he chose, it could be said to be a real step to the top. The General Staff Headquarters? He was the first to rule out this option. This was the most prominent position, but it had always been the backyard of the Southeast Group. If the cooperation between the two sides changed in the future, it would inevitably put Li Tianlan in a difficult position if he occupied this position. The Navy? It sounded quite good, but he didn't think he had the strength of General Nan. In his opinion, if Thunder God wanted to move, it was the most suitable to replace General Nan. The position of Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters was undoubtedly quite good, and the hidden power was unimaginable. Moreover, if he went to the Army Headquarters, his boss would be Bai Qingzhao, and his immediate boss would be Dongqing Wudi. He could completely cooperate with the 2 big shots to control the Army Headquarters, and the Blood Battalion was in Nanyun Province. It was close to Tianan. If he chose the Blood Battalion, he could directly support Emperor Dong's palace and the Freedom Corps in the future. Xiao Mahai's mouth was dry, and he was so nervous that his whole body was trembling. Saint looked at him playfully and didn't speak. "Don't worry," Li Tianlan said lightly, "you can take your time to think about it." Xiao Mahai hesitated and seemed to make up his mind. He smiled bitterly and said, "Your Highness, at the beginning, I did have the idea of using you to leave the desert prison. But to be honest, I'm not sure where I should go after leaving the desert prison. I still have some self-knowledge. In terms of ability, I have it, but I'm not the best. Let me go to these 4 positions. I should be able to do a good job, but I feel like I'm treading on thin ice every day. I don't think I like this kind of feeling." Li Tianlan took a sip of the soup and agreed. Xiao Mahai smiled and scratched his head. "But the Deputy Palace Master said that Your Highness is very satisfied with me. I think I've done a good job by Your Highness's side. If possible, Your Highness, I'd better stay with you. I don't want the position of Lieutenant General. I'll follow you to deal with some small things." Saint raised his eyebrows slightly. Li Tianlan raised his head and glanced at Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai's eyes were calm. Everything he said and did came from the bottom of his heart. There was no need to lie. Li Tianlan looked at him for a while. "You don't want any of these 4 positions?" Li Tianlan asked. "In fact, these 4 positions are very good. Can even be said that they are all my dreams." Xiao Mahai smiled cheekily and cheekily said, "But compared with the positions beside Your Highness, these 4 positions suddenly don't look good." "Li Tianlan?" Saint burst out laughing. "Well said. Get out." Li Tianlan laughed and scolded him. He kicked Xiao Mahai and said, "Get me a bowl of soup." Xiao Mahai smiled and turned to walk out of the restaurant. "From today on, you are the butler of Emperor Dong's palace." Li Tianlan looked at his back and said slowly. Chapter 802. Xiao Mahai's figure disappeared at the door of the dining room. His back was light and cheerful, and everyone could see that he was happy and satisfied from the bottom of his heart. He had never thought that he needed to be in a high position in his life. It was important to have self-knowledge and self-control. It just so happened that Xiao Mahai had both of these qualities. He was capable but not at the top. He was ambitious but not too ambitious. The military rank of Major General and the position of Commander of the Army Group. At that time, Xiao Mahai's biggest wish was nothing more than to go further and become a Lieutenant General, or at most a Lieutenant General with a higher title. When he came to the desert prison, his military rank was promoted by 1 level, and he guarded the yellow sand for thousands of miles. His biggest ambition was nothing more than to leave here and not be looked down upon. That was all. Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, Chief of the General Staff, Commander of the Navy of Zhongzhou State, Commander of the Blood Battalion, each of these positions was more prominent than the other. These were all figures standing at the top of the military. Xiao Mahai believed that he was qualified for these positions, but just as he said, he was cautious and conscientious, as if he was walking on thin ice. This was not the feeling he liked. These positions were too heavy and he felt that they were not suitable for him. He just wanted to leave the desert prison. If he could follow Li Tianlan, that would be the best. Not to mention Li Tianlan's future position. Even now, his position was not bad if he followed Li Tianlan. It didn't matter if he was a butler, a servant, or a servant. In more than a year, he didn't feel that Li Tianlan looked down on him. As long as Li Tianlan didn't look down on him, no one dared to look down on him at all. He was the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. He was really competent for this position and he could do it very happily. This was the best situation. Li Tianlan watched his back disappear, shook his head slightly, glanced at Saint on the screen of the mobile phone and whispered, "I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that he has no ambition. I don't know what he thinks, but even if he is content with the status quo, his current choice is not a loss." Saint laughed. He had already known everything about Xiao Mahai, and he was also very satisfied with Li Tianlan's arrangement. To expand the territory he naturally needed ambitious generals, and the most important thing for the people around him was to be content. Xiao Mahai was undoubtedly well behaved. Don't look down on yourself in Emperor Dong's palace. The chief steward of Emperor Dong's palace has a high status now. Can you imagine what the chief steward of Emperor Dong's palace will be like in 10 years? What about 20 years later? At that time, the position of general might not necessarily be enough to exchange for the position of butler, let alone the position of chief butler. Li Tianlan nodded. Now that you mention it, I'm looking forward to it. Saint smiled. His eyes were drifting and he seemed to be yearning. He had seen a dynasty that truly belonged to a person. Even though he had only seen it in a blue notebook, seeing it was seeing it. He knew very well what the housekeeper of such a dynasty meant to the entire dark world. The only pity was that in the dynasty he saw, the chief butler was not Xiao Mahai. How are your injuries? Li Tianlan asked suddenly. Saint did not participate in the fighting and games in the chaos of Eastern Europe, but he was also seriously injured. Not only him but military counselor, Azura and general, the three super masters of Samsara Palace, were also seriously injured. Saint, military advisor, general, Azura. They were the strongest 4 of the 12 super masters of Samsara Palace. Their injuries all came from the sword of summer solstice when they raided Mount Dibbing. Just one sword. Azura and general were out of danger not long ago. Their vital signs gradually stabilized and they were still in a coma. Although military counselor was still walking in the outside world, he had never fought with anyone since then. He was like an ordinary person, and it was not until recently that he began to slowly recover. After that, Saint chose to recuperate in Lin'an. Finally he broke through to the invincible realm in Lin'an. But his breakthrough was too intense. Instead of healing, his injuries got worse. Li Tianlan was not sure if he had recovered after more than a year. "It's okay," Saint said thoughtfully, "it's not a big problem to fight with others, but it will take some time to recover." "Will it delay the progress?" Li Tianlan frowned. Saint was 40 years old this year. It was not too early for him to break through to the invincible realm at the age of 39. In a few years his physical peak would pass. In the case of physical decline, it was extremely difficult to go further. Not everyone could be like Wang Tianzong. The next few years were critical for Saint. If his injuries were not healed, it would be difficult for him to completely stabilize his realm and rush into the peak of the invincible realm. "It's not a big problem," Saint said slowly, "there is still time and my injuries are almost healed. At the very least at this stage my strength is enough. As for the future, Emperor Dong's palace doesn't care about my strength but yours. If you are invincible in the world, it doesn't matter if I stop here." Li Tianlan frowned and didn't say much. It seemed that since he entered the desert prison, the expectations of the people around him were too high, so high that even they themselves were a little negative. But such feelings, Li Tianlan had no solution at the moment. This was a problem of mentality which could not be solved in a few words. And for some reason, Li Tianlan always felt that there was some special reason for this kind of negativity. Especially military counselor and Saint. "I heard that something happened in Beihai?" Saint was silent for a while and asked slowly. This was not a rumor anymore. The general change was around the corner. The president and the prime minister went to the desert prison in person. Wang Xingxiao deliberately collided with them. Everyone knew that something would happen in Beihai in the near future, but few people knew what would happen for the time being. "Beihai, it's going to be chaotic," Li Tianlan said softly. "What about the specifics?" Saint was a little curious. "The Vatican East Island, the Jiang family of South America." Li Tianlan gave a sarcastic smile. "Is probably these people. One of the key points should have something to do with Wang Qinglei, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that if these people invade the Wang family of Beihai, it will definitely be a big trouble for Wang Xingxiao now." The Vatican East Island, the Jiang family of South America. Saint narrowed his eyes. "More than one invincible realm expert. So they need me," Li Tianlan said calmly. Saint glanced at him and nodded. "I'll go there then." Although his realm was not stable, he could already fight with others. At this time he naturally could not flinch. "No need." Li Tianlan shook his head. "You stay in the hospital to take care of the wounded. I don't want the hospital to be attacked a second time. What about Beihai? Saint hesitated for a moment. Leave it to me. Li Tianlan said calmly and looked at his watch. He looked at his watch and said, in a few hours Wang Xingxiao will probably arrive in Yuzhou. Contact military counselor and sort out some information that Wang Xingxiao needs and give it to him. Then leave the hospital for a while and go to Beihai. Come back at night. To Beihai? Saint frowned. I'll go? He was a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou state. His every move was watched by everyone. Now he contacted Wang Xingxiao with great fanfare and even went to Beihai with him. When the news came out, one could imagine the shock. Yes, to Beihai. Li Tianlan's voice was resolute, and his pupils were extremely hot. Help me bring back coldness of 9 states. He paused and continued, the sooner, the better. I can't wait. Chapter 803. Saint raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Tianlan seriously. He nodded slowly and said, I can leave at any time. Since he became the deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace, or even since he knew Li Tianlan, it was the first time he had seen such eagerness and expectation in Li Tianlan. Take back the coldness of the 9 states. The murderous weapon that had been broken by Shenyuan Feng in Eastern Europe. The divine weapon that could control the sword intent of the Chosen One. For the time being, Saint could not imagine how amazing the changes would be after Li Tianlan obtained the coldness of 9 states, but he understood the cause and effect between Shenyuan Feng and the coldness of 9 states. Now it seemed that Li Tianlan had also realized something. Wang Xingxiao is willing to use the coldness of 9 states as a bargaining chip. Saint smiled and didn't know what to say. This seemed to be a huge price to pay. But it wasn't too big. But no matter what, Wang Xingxiao's choice this time was decisive enough, even decisive. The predecessor of coldness of 9 states was the human emperor. The first murderous weapon that had shaken the dark world for hundreds of years. In order to have a divine weapon that could fully unleash his sword intent, Wang Tianzong decisively cast the human emperor into the coldness of the 9 states. There was actually no difference. After all, the material was the same. The only thing that changed was the shape. The energy requirements of the coldness of the 9 states would not change. In this state, the coldness of the 9 states could bear Wang Tianzong's sword energy and could also be used as a murderous weapon. There might be some trade-offs, but this was obviously not something that Saint could know. Therefore, when the human emperor became the coldness of the 9 states, it might be slightly different from the human emperor, but in essence, it was still a murderous weapon and something that Shenyuan Feng needed. For the Wang family of Beihai, the role of the human emperor was not significant in the following period. During the final battle of Heaven Capital, human emperor had already opened fire on the border of Zhongzhou state. The transformation from Renhuang to coldness of 9 states had exhausted the energy accumulated over the past 3 years. Moreover, after coldness of 9 states was cut off by Shenyuan Feng, it was not easy to repair it. If he kept coldness of 9 states, it could be expected that within 10 years, this divine weapon would not be of much use. Now the Wang family of Beihai was betting on the next few years. They wanted to get through this crisis. When Wang Tianzong recovered from his injury, it would be a new world. Therefore, Wang Xingxiao handed over the coldness of 9 states, which was temporarily useless to North Sea, without any hesitation. Li Tianlan replied with a and did not express any opinion. He just subconsciously adjusted his sitting posture. His heart was obviously not calm, which was an extremely rare emotion for him. He had the kind of anticipation and restlessness that didn't want to wait for even a second longer. When he was a child, he stood in the camp of the Li family and looked up at the star flag and thought about the future of the Li family. Soon after he came to Huading at the beginning of the year, he came out of the Sky Academy and was pushed onto the sofa by Qin Weibai in that villa. Then it was now. Coldness of the 9 states. Human emperor. It belonged to the Wang family of Beihai. But Shenyuan Feng was his. He had enough power to decide Shenyuan Feng's direction. Li Tianlan subconsciously raised his hand and clenched it. The saints were slightly stunned when they saw this posture. This posture didn't seem like he was holding a sword. In a trance, it felt like he was holding the entire world in his hands. Li Tianlan looked at Saint calmly and said, "Don't let anything happen." Saint's heart trembled and he nodded solemnly. "Don't worry." Li Tianlan hung up the video call and looked in the direction of Beihai, waiting for the broken coldness of 9 states. The Shenyuan sword appeared beside him and slowly rotated around him. Li Tianlan stared deeply at the sword and his eyes sparkled. This kind of light was just like the first time Li Huaqing saw him. With light footsteps, Qin Weibai walked into the restaurant with a bowl of soup. Her soft casual clothes made her look indescribably lazy, and her ruddy face was more charming and enchanting than before. Wang Xingxiao left? Qin Weibai placed the soup in front of Li Tianlan and asked curiously. Li Tianlan nodded silently and said, "What about Xiao Mahai? I happened to meet him, so I ordered lunch and asked him to go to the kitchen to prepare." Qin Weibai leaned against Li Tianlan and said lazily, "How was Beihai's offer?" "Very good." Li Tianlan said bluntly, "It was done in one step, better than expected." "What's better?" Qin Weibai glanced at Li Tianlan curiously. "Coldness of 9 states." Li Tianlan said quietly, "This is the condition I added," and Wang Xingxiao agreed. Qin Weibai's eyes lit up and she sat up straight. "So, can Shenyuan Feng evolve again?" "It still needs some research, but the human emperor is relatively special among the murderous weapons. If all murderous weapons come from a piece of metal, the human emperor is closer to the core of that piece of metal, like a heart, and has strong energy." Li Tianlan glanced at Qin Weibai. He said softly. When he fought with Shenyuan Feng in the desert, he discovered Shenyuan Feng's secret. When he came back, he asked Qin Weibai about it in detail, but Qin Weibai said that she did not know what was going on. Li Tianlan did not meditate for the past 2 nights, nor did he study Shenyuan Feng. He was busy bullying Qin Weibai, so how could he have time to care about this? But what was certain was that Shenyuan Feng did need the energy of the murderous weapon in any case. "Is there enough time?" Qin Weibai thought for a while and asked softly. "It should be about time." Li Tianlan thought for a while and said, "Zhongzhou State still needs some time to prepare. As for Beihai, we can slow down the information we provide him. It's not a big problem." Qin Weibai answered obediently and suddenly asked, "What will change this time?" Li Tianlan paused and shook his head. "It should make it more complete, right?" "What about for you?" Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan with quiet eyes. "What about for Beihai?" "For me it's not very useful, but for Beihai it's critical." He looked out the window at the endless yellow sand, thinking about when the situation would break out. After a long silence, he said softly, "I'm going to raise the sword. Then I'll stay here with you." Qin Weibai smiled sweetly. He couldn't accompany her more, so she would stay with him. Li Tianlan smiled and gently touched Qin Weibai's hair. "Don't mess it up." Qin Weibai scratched the back of Li Tianlan's hand and took care of her casually tied black hair. Li Tianlan snapped his fingers. In the subtle light, a subtle light flickered and slowly extended. Finally, it turned into a crystal-clear rose that looked beautiful and gorgeous. "This is..." Qin Weibai opened her eyes wide and looked at Li Tianlan. For a moment she even forgot to breathe. She looked at Li Tianlan and then at the rose. The look in her eyes became more and more complicated. The footsteps of fate seemed to come with an irresistible force. Many years ago or many years later, the man named Dongqing Huangtu was brought over by this force. And now, Li Tianlan finally came to this step. The crystal rose sparkled in Li Tianlan's hand. All the details became more and more perfect, vivid, like the most exquisite work of art, priceless. Li Tianlan gently inserted the rose into Qin Weibai's hair, nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, "It's beautiful." Chapter 804. Qin Weibai gently touched the rose on her head. Her eyes were pure and soft. "This is the first time you've sent me flowers." She smiled gently. The delicate, illusory rose exuded real warmth in her hand. Qin Weibai looked very happy. "I like it very much. If there is a chance in the future, I will give you all the flowers in the world." Li Tianlan's voice was soft, and he made an almost absurd promise. But his eyes were serious and persistent. Qin Weibai was in a trance for a moment. She remembered a story. A story from many years ago. The man who had been almost invincible once promised so. Divine weapons should be given to heroes and flowers should be matched with beauties. He said he would give her all the roses in the world at their wedding. That year, the warrant signed by His Majesty dynasty spread throughout the dark world and all the countries in the world that produced roses. That year, roses became a luxury all over the world. That year there was a rain of flowers. From Zhongzhou State to Italy. Across the 2 continents of Europe and Asia, across mountains and seas, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, countless rose petals were scattered in the sky for tens of thousands of miles, covering the earth and the sea from Zhongzhou State all the way to the Holy Land. It was an indescribable rain of flowers. It was romantic but with an absolute scorching madness and love. But ironically, the groom who did all this did not find his bride at the end. The colorful rain of flowers fell on the earth and the sea, and finally dissipated in the earth and the deep sea. Qin Weibai lowered her head and whispered, "This time I only need one flower." "That's enough." "Not enough." Li Tianlan shook his head. Qin Weibai pulled the chair closer to Li Tianlan and finally leaned into his arms. The rose was quiet in her hair. It was so exquisite that it was almost unreal, but it really existed, so real that it was a little unreal. Li Tianlan put his arm around her shoulder and touched the rose with the other hand. In a slight sound, a string of equally beautiful and incredible crystals appeared where the petals were connected. The crystals fell on the rose and swayed gently with Qin Weibai's breath, looking much more vivid. "It's beautiful," Li Tianlan whispered. Qin Weibai looked up at Li Tianlan and reached out to touch his face. Her eyes were blurred and she giggled. "Do you want me to reward you again?" Li Tianlan was a little excited, but that was it. Agitated, he shook his head and teased, "I've been squeezed dry by you. Bad people." Qin Weibai gently grabbed Li Tianlan's ear and whispered, "It's you who bullied me." Li Tianlan grabbed her little hand and kissed it. He whispered, "Old Xiao is here." Qin Weibai's eyes became clear for a moment, and she sat up straight. Xiao Mahai walked over with a box of food, his face full of smiles. Li Tianlan scooped a bowl of soup for himself and accompanied Qin Weibai to drink unhurriedly. "Xiao Qing is not bad," he suddenly said. "Follow Xiao Bai from now on. She needs someone to take care of her while she's here." Xiao Mahai was stunned and nodded subconsciously. Then he said hesitantly, "Your Highness, my sister, put away your messy thoughts and tell her to go back. She's already married. What's the point of sending me to my side?" Li Tianlan shook his head. "I don't need anyone to take care of me. I'm going to be quiet for a while. Find me a dormitory later. You don't have to deliberately arrange anything. You'll be in charge of my meals from now on." "Okay." Xiao Mahai nodded subconsciously. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Tianlan didn't explain anything. His time in the desert prison had entered a countdown. At the latest, 1 year, at the shortest, he would leave here in a few months. There was not much time left for him. He needed to adjust his state so that he could truly stand in his current peak state. Whether it was for Emperor Dong's palace or for the chaos that the Wang family of Beihai would face next, he needed to make a choice and face everything with the strongest posture. So he had to raise his sword. The Lin clan was hidden from the world. And the current patriarch of the Lin clan was now sitting beside him obediently. After leaving the desert prison, Li Tianlan had to let everyone know that in the dark world, whether it was clear sky or shadow, he was the real #1 person in the dark world. Xiao Mahai turned and left the restaurant. Qin Weibai sat beside him and ate rice. She whispered, "Do you feel the pressure?" "What pressure?" Li Tianlan was a little confused. "The Vatican, the Jiang family of South America, East Island," Qin Weibai said softly. "If you were in the state you were in a year ago, even with Shenyuan Feng, your strength would be slightly worse than Moraid's. You should be on par with Tianhai Wuji and slightly better than Yagyu Kurumi. Of course, if you go all out, the result is hard to say. As for now," she paused and whispered, "Beihai's current situation is not very optimistic. If you want to carry it by yourself, you will be under a lot of pressure." "It's okay." Li Tianlan smiled. After all, Qin Weibai didn't understand martial arts. These analyses came from others, so it was inevitable that they were not accurate enough. Even if they were accurate, it was him and Shenyuan Feng a year ago, not now. "It's okay. Don't worry," he said softly. Qin Weibai hesitated and whispered, "It's not that we can't find help." "Oh." Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He knew some invincible realm experts who were willing to help him. But now there was basically no one who could help. Tribulation was unconscious, and Situt Sangyue had not recovered from her serious injury. After all, Saint represented Mount Shu. He could become the deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, but it was not appropriate for him to participate in the affairs of Beihai. Only he could come forward. Northern Europe, the Dark Nights. Qin Weibai whispered, "Flaming fire is there, and the palace master hasn't." She hesitated and continued, "Before the palace master died, flaming fire played the role of the master of Samsara Palace unless it was necessary. Her strength is not bad. Even if she can't compare with Moraid, at least she is enough to hold Yagyu Kurumi, and your pressure will be much less." "Flaming fire," Li Tianlan murmured to himself and whispered, "How are she and Alpha?" "Alpha has woken up, but it's hard for him to recover from his serious injury in a short time. Flaming Fire's injury is basically healed, but she rarely contacts us. The palace master died." She is angry with you, me and many people. But if you are in trouble she will definitely help. Qin Weibai whispered. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and finally shook his head. No, I can solve it. Don't be careless. Qin Weibai stared at Li Tianlan's face. If there were no accidents, the next year or two would be the most critical period for Li Tianlan. She didn't want any accidents to happen to him. In the current dark world, there are very few people who are qualified to be your enemy, but each of them is not easy to deal with. You're wrong. Li Tianlan looked at her quietly. Everyone who thinks so is wrong. His tone was calm. But there was extreme confidence between the lines. That was not arrogance. It was pure confidence. There are no enemies under my sword. Li Tianlan whispered, only non-entities. Chapter 805. After lunch, Xiao Mahai had already prepared a new dormitory for Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was very satisfied with it. He ordered that the prison would not entertain outsiders in the near future. He simply shook Qin Weibai's hand, and then began his sword training career that might last for a few months or even a year. Both Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai had absolute confidence in the sword that they had nurtured for a long time and the firmest will. Qin Weibai returned to Li Tianlan's original dormitory. The air in the dormitory still lingered with the lingering scent of romance. She opened the window, sat in front of the computer, thought for a moment and entered a website. Layers of passwords completely isolated all the possibility of being tracked and monitored. A complicated and exquisite web page appeared in front of Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai pursed her lips, and her dreamy perfect face was calm and rational. She quickly issued a series of orders. On the web page, windows popped up one after another and quickly closed. After doing all this, Qin Weibai opened the communication subsystem of the website and sent a few invitations with her slender fingers. Saint's figure appeared on the communication screen first. The screen began to separate. It separated into 3 small screens. Saint was in the middle. Qin Weibai glanced at him and nodded. The next second, the screen on the left lit up, and military counselor greeted them with an easygoing smile. I thought you were at the airport now. Saint glanced at military counselor and raised his eyebrows. I did. It's not a big deal. Why would I go there? If there is something, it can't be said in an occasion like the airport. Military counselor shook his head carelessly and suddenly laughed. Are you bored? One is in the hospital and the other is in the prison. I found a good game recently and I recommend it to you. Saint looked at his careless state and shook his head. Hua Xingyang, one of the 9 counselors of Zhongzhou State and the leader of the academics, the vice minister of the cabinet, made a high-profile inspection of Huading, and before his departure, he hoped to have a more in-depth discussion with military counselor. Everyone could see that military counselor was Hua Xingyang's key goal this time. However, when it came to military counselor, it became not a big deal, even less important than his game. It's not necessary. Qin Weibai said blandly, even if you want to express your attitude, you don't have to deliberately snub him. After all, he is a director of Zhongzhou State. What's the benefit of offending him? Of course I would have dealt with him in the past, but now I'm really too lazy to do anything. So what if I offend him? Wait for me to back off. If I do, I'll be like a wild crane, and I can't be bothered to serve these so-called giants. The military advisor shook his head. Saint wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he did not say anything. Qin Weibai stopped talking. The third small screen on the screen was temporarily unconnected, and the screen was pitch black. How's Tianlan's negotiation with them? Military counselor asked. We've temporarily stabilized the council. Qin Weibai looked at the screen that was still dark and said slowly, Tianlan has decided to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai has agreed to all the conditions we expected and used the broken coldness of 9 states as a bargaining chip. Tianlan has begun to raise the sword. What changes will there be? Military counselor's eyes lit up. Without a doubt, he was asking about the changes that the coldness of 9 states had made to Shenyuan Feng. Qin Weibai did not say anything. She glanced at Saint. She really did not understand martial arts. Although Li Tianlan's current realm was low, his sword intent had touched the end of martial arts. Even if she understood martial arts, she could not say what the so-called changes would be. Only Saint could understand a little. It was not because he was an invincible realm expert. It was because he was Saint. The changes are not that big. Saint thought for a moment and analyzed all kinds of possibilities. But it should be crucial to Beihai. It depends on how well the palace master raises the sword. It's nothing more than the difference between the power of one sword and the power of one person. Qin Weibai subconsciously touched the rose on her head. She touched the petals and could feel that Li Tianlan was watching the conversation here through the rose. Qin Weibai smiled and felt a little relieved. What is this? Military counselor looked at the rose and was a little curious. Where did you buy it? Give me one too, but I want lilies. I want some lilies. This is the palace master's eyes. Saint said with a faint smile. Even if he is not here, he can see your every move now. So, if you talk about retiring or something, be careful that he will really beat you up when he sees you. Saint's face stiffened for a moment. He gave a hollow laugh and said hello, hello your highness. The incredibly delicate rose moved, and the crystal on its stem shook slightly, becoming more and more vivid. Click, a faint noise suddenly rang out. There was an intermittent sound from the third small screen. The screen was still dark, but it showed that it was connected. A somewhat hoarse voice sounded. It seemed to deliberately hide its voice. What's the matter? Saint and military counselor were quiet for a moment. Qin Weibai's eyes flickered and she asked, how is the situation in Beihai? In the dark screen, the voice was silent for a moment, and then he laughed in a low voice. The undercurrent is turbulent. I have confirmed the whereabouts of more than 2,000 people, all of whom are elites. The Jiang family of South America, Knights Templars, Jifeng Sword Raining School, and Wuji Palace all have elites lurking. Can be said that these families have put in a lot of effort. According to our analysis, in a few months, they can even stuff tens of thousands of people in Beihai, maybe even more. Tens of thousands of elites are at least in the ice-condensing realm. How large of a Beihai core can they be? He paused and tutade. For Beihai province, this is definitely a disaster, and it can even be said to be the only disaster in their history. More than 10,000 people, military counselor frowned. It's not easy to hide so many people. No matter how Wang Xiaoyao manages, it can't be foolproof. These people can't lurk for long and they will definitely be exposed. What does that matter? In the dark screen, the man laughed in a low voice. Even if they are exposed, the Wang family of Beihai can't deal with so many people in a short time. At that time, the whole Beihai will be covered with blood, and the trust of Beihai people in the Beihai government and Mount Dibing will drop to the lowest point. The 7 sword-holding families will suffer heavy losses, or even be completely wiped out. These things only need an outbreak, not a tug-of-war. It's hard for Beihai to react. Once it happens, Zhongzhou State can forcefully intervene in everything in Beihai. There's nothing more perfect than this. Saint and military counselor were silent. Qin Weibai was also silent. After a long time, Qin Weibai breathed a sigh of relief and said calmly, "Don't think Beihai is too simple." Yes. The hoarse voice was non-committal. What's the attitude of the Samsara Palace? Hua Xingyang's inspection of Huading should be for military counselor, right? They attach great importance to you except for 3 visits to the thatched cottage. Our attitude is Qianlan's attitude. Qin Weibai's voice was cold. Your young master is ready to fully cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. After a short silence, the voice murmured, fully cooperate? Yes. Qin Weibai nodded. Fully cooperate. Tricky. In the dark, he said in a deep voice. So Tianlan needs time. Today, I need you to hand over to military counselor. Whether it's intelligence or resources, we can share them. In any case, we must temporarily stop the actions of the major forces. Qin Fangqing leaned back and rubbed his temples. He let out a long sigh, not hiding his exhaustion at all. Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao. Mount Dibing East Imperial Palace. 2 people and 2 forces really took up too much of his energy. This was really related to the future pattern of Zhongzhou State. His expectations were so great that he was even unwilling to bear any bad risks. To be honest, Qin Fangqing's mentality was out of balance. He knew this, but he couldn't control his irritation. Comrade Xingyang inspected Huading, but the one in Huading didn't go to the airport. Does this mean that he's not optimistic about our operation? It can even be said that some international powers are not optimistic about our operation? Qin Fangqing said softly. Maybe he's just not willing to take too many risks. In the field he's best at, the Wang family of Beihai is no weaker than him or even stronger. And we can never give too many benefits to people like him, let alone some core things. So it's understandable that he's not willing to get involved. Li Huaqing's voice was flat. Then why did Saint leave with Wang Xingxiao? Qin Fangqing's eyes were gloomy. We just came back. If Wang Shengshao didn't talk to Li Tianlan, how could Saint be so blatant? Probe? Does he really think that Zhongzhou state can't punish him now? Li Huaqing glanced at him silently and said with a poker face, "What are you going to do? The other party has made a move. No matter what his purpose is, we can't do nothing." Qin Fangqing said flatly, "Some plans for Tiannan can be implemented. They want to help, but we must reduce it appropriately to show Li Tianlan our determination and attitude. Suspend the supply of some weapons and armaments that have been finalized recently." Li Huaqing frowned. "At this time, if we act too aggressively, we can only let him get closer to Beihai. Then continue to reduce the aid." Qin Fangqing was expressionless. "At the same time, speed up the plan for Beihai. He hasn't broken through to the invincible realm, and his combat capability is limited. The strength of Emperor Dong's palace is also limited. Besides, he has promised us that he will stay in prison during the chaos in Beihai. In this case, let the chaos in Beihai break out earlier. Are you worried that his promise to us is to buy time for him to break through to the invincible realm?" Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows. "I'm not worried about that." Qin Fangqing's tone was cold. "On the contrary, I'm looking forward to it. I will continue to reduce the aid to Xinyuan City, and he will stay in prison. This is his promise. If he dares to break it, it means that he officially refuses our proposal. Kunlun City can't satisfy his appetite. What about the Heavenly Sun?" Qin Fangqing said in a low voice. "He's ambitious and deserves to be killed." Li Huaqing's body shook slightly. "Deserve to be killed?" He narrowed his eyes tightly and pondered. "Now Emperor Dong's palace is very dangerous. He just doesn't know it. Li Tianlan has potential, but it doesn't mean that Emperor Dong's palace has the strength of the Wang family of Beihai. With the strength of Zhongzhou state, if they really want to attack Emperor Dong's palace, even with Li Tianlan, how long can they hold on? Half a day or a day?" "Prime Minister." Li Huaqing suddenly spoke and interrupted Qin Fangqing. Qin Fangqing looked up at him. "You're too aggressive," Li Huaqing said in a light tone. Qin Fangqing was stunned. After a long while, he took a deep breath and stopped talking. "We all need to calm down," Li Huaqing said. He didn't doubt Qin Fangqing's words. Li Tianlan had great potential. Emperor Dong's palace also had great potential. But if Zhongzhou state really wanted to destroy Emperor Dong's palace, it didn't even need half a day or a day. An hour was enough. The dense missiles could completely cover every corner of Tiannan. In a few seconds, Tiannan could be turned into purgatory and scorched earth. Under that level of artillery fire, no matter how strong Li Tianlan was, he couldn't survive. It was not a question of whether he could do it or not. It was a question of whether he could do it or not. Zhongzhou state was the most powerful country in the world. But Zhongzhou state didn't belong to the two of them. If the two of them really joined forces, don't forget that the army headquarters was still in the hands of Dongqing Wudi. Qin Fangqing was silent for a while and nodded. "You're right. It's not suitable to talk about this topic today." Li Huaqing pushed the teacup forward and said slowly, "Let's talk about something else." "Something else?" Qin Fangqing looked at him, a little confused. "Let's not talk about Beihai or Emperor Dong's palace." Li Huaqing's eyes were a little complicated. "Let's talk about Zhongzhou state." Chapter 807. Li Huaqing wanted to talk about Zhongzhou state with Qin Fangqing. There was no doubt that even in the whole world, the two of them were the most qualified to talk about Zhongzhou state. The afternoon was quiet and heavy. The sunlight outside the window shone in through the window, seeming to soak the waves on the hidden Dragon Sea. The warm light shone on Li Huaqing's face. His eyes were a little complicated. Qin Fangqing's heart sank slightly. He had never seen Li Huaqing's eyes like this. There were all kinds of complicated emotions in those unfathomable abyss-like eyes. There was anger, regret, disappointment, and coldness. And hesitation. Hesitation. This was the emotion that Qin Fangqing didn't want to see the most. Qin Fangqing's palm shook. The delicate white porcelain teacup collided with the lid, making a harsh sound. His expression gradually became determined, like a rock. "How can we not talk about Beihai when talking about Zhongzhou state?" Qin Fangqing looked at Li Huaqing's eyes and said slowly. Li Huaqing glanced at him, nodded, and said with a smile, "What do you think of the Wang family of Beihai?" "Meritorious," Qin Fangqing said calmly, "but no mistakes are the biggest mistakes." Li Huaqing was silent. No one could deny that. The Wang family of Beihai's contribution to Zhongzhou state was obvious to all. For hundreds of years, the rise of Zhongzhou state at every critical moment almost had the shadow of the Wang family of Beihai. In the beginning they introduced technology from the West. They attacked Star State. They broke the technical blockade with a relatively neutral identity. They strengthened the diplomatic ties between Zhongzhou state and some Western countries. They contributed their own technology. They supported the construction of Zhongzhou state. For hundreds of years, the Wang family of Beihai shone the most dazzling light in the history of Zhongzhou state. Their contributions didn't need to be detailed, because they couldn't say it. Meritorious. But no mistakes were the biggest mistakes. With the help of the Wang family of Beihai, Zhongzhou state ascended to the position of the world's top power. But as a part of Zhongzhou state, what did Beihai ask of Zhongzhou state? Nothing. There was nothing. The Wang family of Beihai almost never made any request to Zhongzhou state. This behemoth, which had a president and a prime minister and still controlled the Southeast Group, had always been detached from Zhongzhou state, but it was involved in some top-secret plans of Zhongzhou state. Beihai had no requirements for Zhongzhou state, nor did it rely on Zhongzhou state. This meant that they had a lot of choices. In this state, the Wang family of Beihai was like a shadow floating over Zhongzhou state. There was sunshine and glory. But in any case it could not hide the fact that the Wang family of Beihai was too detached, too domineering, too strong and too free. Looking down from above. This was Beihai's attitude toward Zhongzhou state for hundreds of years. To put it simply, such a North Sea province could not be controlled. No one in power could control the North Sea province. This feeling of being out of control would make anyone in power restless. No one could imagine how much influence Beihai had on Zhongzhou state. The rise of Zhongzhou state was the growth of Beihai. Almost every group and every person in power in Zhongzhou state had seen a similar model. Or rather, they were different models in different eras. The model simulated the impact on Zhongzhou state if the Wang family of Beihai suddenly collapsed or parted ways with Zhongzhou state. Every model had a different time, so the consequences were different as well. The model contained a large amount of social data. It was densely packed, but the most eye-catching thing was that one line in the model. That was the line that represented the influence of the Wang family of Beihai on Zhongzhou state. The line was green at the beginning, but as time went on, it continued to rise, turning into dark green, light gray, light purple, reddish, and scarlet. 20 years ago, that line had already crossed the highest warning line, turning into a sinister scarlet red that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The model was highly credible. A large number of sociologists, economists, psychologists, financial professors, politicians, and a large number of analysts were assembled. Every time the model was built, it was almost a super large team of thousands of people that analyzed and built it carefully. There was more and more data in the model. The latest model had millions of data. Almost no one knew what these data meant. To put it bluntly, if the Wang family of Beihai suddenly collapsed, or if the Wang family of Beihai broke with Zhongzhou state, the overall economy of Zhongzhou state would collapse at an unimaginable speed. Within a week, more than 400 industries in Zhongzhou state would suffer the first wave of impact. Within a month, the impact would spread to the whole country, and countless industries would be violently shaken. Within half a year, numerous group companies would be forced to go bankrupt. Optimistically, tens of millions of people would lose their jobs, and the social order would be on the verge of collapse. Within a year, the huge social problem would directly become an economic loss that would be unbearable for Zhongzhou state. The national power would decline seriously, and the currency would depreciate or appreciate crazily. In the southeast region, Huading, Wuyue, Jiangzhou, Jianghuai, Jiangnan, Minnan and other provinces would almost be completely out of control. The political order of Zhongzhou state would also become chaotic. 2 years later, after the first wave of chaos of the Wang family of Beihai passed, Zhongzhou state would face a more severe situation. It was a disaster. It was not a natural disaster. It was a real disaster. This was the current Wang family of Beihai. They had contributed too much. Brilliant, glorious, gorgeous. It was beneficial to Zhongzhou state. But it had become a cancer of Zhongzhou state. Under the current system of Zhongzhou state, such a transcendent force should not have appeared. But in fact it did exist. The biggest reason was that Beihai was too free. It had no desire for Zhongzhou state, but it showed its influence all the time. In this state, Beihai was very much like Rothschild in Europe at its peak hundreds of years ago, or the Vatican in a more distant time. In fact, there had been a cognition in the dark world hundreds of years ago. Such a cognition was not that the Wang family of Beihai was the strongest force in the dark world. It was about the cognition of the country. 6 major powers in the world. Zhongzhou State, Star State, Germany, Snow Country, England. The 6th. Mount Dibing. Not Beihai Province, not the Wang family of Beihai. It was Mount Dibing. Such a cognition was not only because of the strength of Mount Dibing. It was also because of the almost exaggerated influence of Mount Dibing. In such a case, every person in power would ask himself, was Zhongzhou State the Zhongzhou State of the Zhongzhou State people or the Zhongzhou State of the Beihai people? No one could tolerate such a thing. The clearest fact was that the countless branches of the Wang family of Beihai had more than one president in hundreds of years. However, almost every president who came from North Sea ended up on bad terms with the patriarch's faction. What did this mean? Such a superpower should not exist from the perspective of politics, the country, and the situation. They didn't do anything before because there was no chance. There would be twists and turns inside Beihai. There would be changes and turbulence. But they had the Li family with them at that time. The Li family would help them with all the current waves appropriately. They were close to Beihai, but they always maintained a delicate balance. Zhongzhou State couldn't do anything. The real opportunity began more than 20 years ago. The Li family collapsed, and no one would escort Beihai when it was in the most dangerous time. This was the best opportunity. Today, more than 20 years later, the opportunity was fully ripe. The new Li family and Beihai had great grievances. The Lin clan, which was inextricably linked with Beihai, also had cracks with them. Rothschild couldn't take care of himself. The Sword Emperor was missing. Mount Dibing, which had internal and external troubles, became a real isolated island. This was the best opportunity, and it could even be said to be the only opportunity in the long future. Chen Fangqing didn't care about any consequences. He had to take down Mount Dibing. Only Beihai Province, which was completely controlled by Zhongzhou State, would not be a cancer. No one could stop him. Li Tianlan couldn't. Li Huaqing couldn't either. They stood together. Li Huaqing couldn't hesitate at all. The Wang family of Beihai can't be left alive. Chen Fangqing said slowly. His voice was low and he spoke word by word. Li Huaqing furrowed his brows. Today, Chen Fangqing's killing intent was too heavy. It was as if he was mentally prepared for the worst and intended to be tough to the end. This kind of attitude had completely deviated from their original intentions. He could understand the problem in the other party's mentality, but he couldn't accept it. Prime Minister, as you said, Beihai has contributed to Zhongzhou State. At least now, it seems that their influence is positive, and they haven't caused irreparable disaster to Zhongzhou State. Therefore we should slow down the Wang family of Beihai. Any drastic action may cause unimaginable serious consequences. Li Huaqing said softly, this may be a matter that will involve years or even decades of planning. As for the plan that would take years or even decades, it was still the same. We have to calm down and plan slowly. We shouldn't make any drastic moves. Otherwise this matter will deteriorate. Chen Fangqing narrowed his eyes and said blankly, I don't have time but you do. We're different. He really didn't have time. Next year would be the end of his term. He hoped that this matter could have a clear outline before this time next year, and everyone would remember his achievements. He wanted to leave a clear situation for Zhongzhou State, not a mess. Li Huaqing still had 5 years. But Chen Fangqing really didn't have time. So he persuaded Wang Qinglei. So there was the coming chaos of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Huaqing knew this but he didn't agree or oppose it. Wang Qinglei persuaded several superpowers. What could they do by sneaking into Beihai? Chaos. They only brought chaos, blood, lives, hatred and wailing to Beihai. And the opportunity of Zhongzhou State. When several superpowers, many thunder-shocking scriptures and several invincible realm experts brought unimaginable losses to Beihai, the support of the people of Beihai for Mount Dibing would naturally decline, and their cohesion would become loose. Zhongzhou State would have the best reason to intervene in Beihai to maintain stability. But such a means was too drastic. Li Huaqing didn't deny that it was effective, but it was not what he liked. But after all, it was not a means of Zhongzhou State to Beihai. It could only be said that the decisive battle between Wang Qinglei and Mount Dibing was fierce, but at least on the surface, it had nothing to do with Zhongzhou State. So Li Huaqing let the situation develop to this point. But as time went by, Li Huaqing clearly noticed the change of Chen Fangqing's thinking. The Beihai core openly expanded. Wang Xingxiao did not hesitate to fight. Xinyuan City developed rapidly. Li Tianlan obeyed in public but opposed in private. More and more things beyond his control made Chen Fangqing's thinking gradually go to extremes. Li Huaqing was still thinking about how to control the Wang family of Beihai. But now Qin Fangqing's mind was full of destruction. Destroy the Wang family of Beihai. Destroy Emperor Dong's palace. I understand your urgency, Li Huaqing said softly, but not only Beihai, but also Zhongzhou State can't afford too much risk. I'm the president of Zhongzhou State. Beihai is above me. I don't care about the situation of Beihai, but I have to be responsible for the whole Zhongzhou State. What do you mean? Qin Fangqing raised his head expressionlessly and looked at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing stood up, walked to the window and turned his back to Qin Fangqing. I don't think what we're doing now is wrong, but any approach and any plan must be in line with the general trend. The chaos that Beihai is about to face will be the last test of Zhongzhou State. If things really can't be done, compromise may be a better way. You want to compromise? Qin Fangqing abruptly stood up. Beihai is not an enemy. Li Huaqing quietly said, the purpose of a battle is not to kill or be killed. When necessary, both sides need a path of retreat. A Pyrrhic victory is no victory. When the odds of victory are not high, what's the point of being tough? Don't you know how many years Zhongzhou State has prepared for this plan? It's easy to say to give up. In the current situation, how can Zhongzhou State give up? This is a rare opportunity. If we let Beihai take a breather, Beihai's influence on Zhongzhou State will be more obvious in the future. Zhongzhou State is our Zhongzhou State, not the Wang family's Zhongzhou State. Do you understand? Qin Fangqing growled and his face turned red. What you said makes sense, but it's not all right. Li Huaqing said flatly, Zhongzhou State now has Emperor Dong's palace. In the worst case, it's not unacceptable to let Emperor Dong's palace and Beihai form a new balance. You're thinking about defeat before the battle. The president is really far-sighted. Qin Fangqing sneered with undisguised sarcasm. We don't have a big chance of winning this game, and Beihai has no chance of winning either. We have our own positions. What's tested is the rationality and wisdom of both sides. We'll try to take something from each other when the other side can accept it. Beihai wants freedom and we want to control it. Li Huaqing turned to look at Qin Fangqing. But that's all. We don't want war. No one wants war. What this game needs most is rationality. Those who are impulsive, have killing intent, and can't control themselves will end up out. Qin Fangqing narrowed his eyes and kept silent for a long time. The best news is that we're well prepared now. After more than 20 years of planning, we have a big chance of winning. So if possible, we can't give the Wang family of Beihai or Emperor Dong's palace too much time. Qin Fangqing lowered his head and kept silent for a while. Then he slowly said, I'll talk to Wang Qinglei, have a good talk. Chapter 808. Wang Qinglei sat quietly in his office, listening to the report of an old subordinate of Yuzhou. Saint, a new invincible realm expert, boarded Wang Xingxiao's plane. As soon as this happened, Wang Qinglei heard about it. When everyone was thinking about the possible meaning behind it, Wang Qinglei was undoubtedly the most uneasy one. However, Wang Xingxiao stayed in Yuzhou for too short a time. Saint was too decisive. So until now, people only knew the news, but they didn't know what happened in that hospital. Is there still no news from the hospital? Wang Qinglei looked at his watch and asked slowly. The person who talked to him on the phone was a deputy mayor of Yuzhou, who was transferred from the position of speaker of a city in Wuxia. He could be regarded as his trusted subordinate, so the other party was very calm about his report, and his questions were very straightforward. No. As Wang Qinglei's old subordinate, Lu Xiu, the deputy mayor of Yuzhou, held the phone with a solemn and serious expression. I've sent someone there, but that hospital is a bit special and is closely watched by the army headquarters. Speaker, this matter is not so simple. I don't think there will be any valuable news in the hospital. The key is the attitude of that person in the desert. He was one of Wang Qinglei's most valued confidants. At the age of 46, he was at the level of deputy governor and the position of deputy mayor of Yuzhou, which was a very valuable position. Such a young age and position matched perfectly. If someone helped him, it was very likely that he would rise rapidly. Wang Qinglei was undoubtedly his benefactor. He was very clear about the estrangement between the speaker and the Southeast group. More clearly, if the speaker could win, he would be rewarded according to his contributions in the future. After a year, he was very likely to go further. Even if he couldn't be promoted in Yuzhou, it was very likely that he would be sent to serve as the governor of a province. And if Wang Qinglei failed as a confidant, Lu Xiu would not have a good end. The facts were in front of him. He naturally had to do his best for the things that the old leader cared about. Wang Qinglei snorted softly and rubbed his tightly frowned eyebrows. The attitude of that person in the desert? He smiled bitterly and somewhat self-deprecatingly. No matter what the attitude of that person was, it was not something he could influence. Lu Xiu heard Wang Qinglei's bitter smile, hesitated, and continued, "Speaker, don't forget that you are also a member of the Wang family of Beihai." Wang Qinglei was stunned. He narrowed his eyes and said, "What are you trying to say? You're the most important figure in the Wang family of Beihai. If you win this game, you'll be the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai in the future. Now what Mount Dibing can give to that person you might be able to." Lu Xiu remained calm and collected. After a brief silence, Wang Qinglei let out a long breath and calmly said, "Let's call it a day. Pay more attention to the hospital and look for me if there's any problem." Lu Xiu smiled, nodded, and hung up the phone. Wang Qinglei stood up and paced around his office. After thinking for a while, he picked up his phone and called Qin Fangqing. The phone rang twice before it was hung up. At this time, Qin Fangqing, who had received the news, should be discussing with Li Huaqing. Wang Qinglei returned to his desk, dealt with a few documents and waited silently. More than an hour later, his phone suddenly rang. Wang Qinglei answered the phone calmly. "Hello, Prime Minister." "Yes, Comrade Qinglei, are you looking for me?" On the phone, Qin Fangqing's voice was steady and calm. His mentality might be a little unbalanced. But compared with Wang Qinglei, who had no way out, Qin Fangqing still had the right to control him. Wang Qinglei smiled and said in a deep voice, "What do you think of Saint's actions, Prime Minister?" Qin Fangqing did not speak. Whether this is the test of Emperor Dong's palace or the decision of Emperor Dong's palace, Li Tianlan's wild ambition has undoubtedly been exposed. "Prime Minister, I think we must take action." Wang Qinglei continued. "What do you think?" Qin Fangqing asked slowly after a moment of silence. "I think we should pay a proper visit to Minister Dongqing." Wang Qinglei said without hesitation, "Not only Minister Dongqing Wudi, but also Minister Dongqing Hongguang. In addition, we need a clear attitude from the four spirit generals of Zhongzhou State, Gongsun Qi Li Wangxing, and even Sai City, all the organizations that keep close ties with Emperor Dong's palace. They can be close to Li Tianlan, but they can't forget their responsibilities in Zhongzhou State." "Go on," Qin Fangqing said with no fluctuation in his voice. "In addition, I need the full cooperation of Zhongzhou State." Wang Qinglei continued. Yuzhou Hidden Dragon Sea. In the Prime Minister's office, Qin Fangqing narrowed his eyes and his voice was a little gloomy. "Full cooperation. Activate all the forces of Zhongzhou State left in Beihai." Wang Qinglei's voice was decisive and ruthless. "There's no time. I can't afford the slightest risk now. I personally think Li Tianlan hasn't made up his mind yet. Saint's going to Beihai may be a test of Emperor Dong's palace, or he has made up his mind but hasn't invested resources. Anyway, we have to show him Zhongzhou State's determination to take Beihai, show him the power of Zhongzhou State, and the consequences of going against the will of Zhongzhou State. I suggest using all the chess pieces of Zhongzhou State left in Beihai, cooperate with the Vatican and East Island, and stir up the greatest chaos as soon as possible before Li Tianlan makes up his mind." Qin Fangqing's body tensed quietly for a moment, and he didn't speak. "There's no time." Wang Qinglei said blandly, "Don't say that Zhongzhou State doesn't have enough power in Beihai. It's impossible. Prime Minister, when you came to me it was 15 years ago. At that time I was still a deputy governor of Wuxia, not even a director of Wuxia. You were already prepared at that time. If I'm not wrong, when the Li family collapsed more than 20 years ago, you started to operate. But at that time, it was not you and President Li Huaqing who were responsible for these things. After more than 20 years of planning, I'm looking forward to how powerful Zhongzhou State is hiding in Beihai. I personally think our current strength is enough." Qin Fangqing was silent for a long time and then said slowly, "I don't deny that what you said makes sense, but I can't give you an answer on this matter for a while." He was telling the truth. Zhongzhou State started to plan this more than 20 years ago. At that time, neither he nor Li Huaqing was in the position now. In order to activate all the forces, they had to visit some retired but still had great influence. Only when everyone united their thoughts could they exert the most powerful combat effectiveness. Wang Qinglei said yes and said, "I will persuade the Vatican and East Island." Okay. Qin Fangqing nodded and suddenly said, "If this plan is passed in Zhongzhou State, Beihai will inevitably be in chaos." "How chaotic do you want Beihai to be?" Wang Qinglei was stunned. He didn't seem to think about this. He held the phone and thought about it for a long time before he laughed. His smile was elegant and gentle. But there was madness in his eyes. Turn the world upside down. He held the phone and said calmly. Chapter 809. Wang Qinglei's voice was clear and steady. It was because of the clarity that Qin Fangqing could clearly feel the depression and madness in his voice. This kind of emotion was so strong that it seemed to hit Qin Fangqing across the phone. It was so heavy that Qin Fangqing felt a little suffocated. To turn the Wang family of Beihai upside down. Even if he was the prime minister of Zhongzhou state, he couldn't imagine what it would be like. But there was no doubt that it was indeed the picture he had been looking forward to for a long time. Now it seemed that Wang Qinglei seemed to be crazier than they thought. Qin Fangqing was a little relieved. He was also a little shocked. The plan did start a long time ago. In the first moment after the collapse of the Li family, the top leadership of Zhongzhou state had begun to operate secretly. Wang Qinglei was not the first candidate they chose. Before this, they'd even vaguely tried to contact Wen Xiyuan, but they were all rejected. Moreover, he didn't give them any leeway. Even the current two giants of the Southeast Group, they had secretly probed them before. The repeated failures did not make Zhongzhou state give up the idea. In fact, the continuous growth of the Wang family of Beihai had reached the point where Zhongzhou state had to try its best to weaken it. They had no choice, just like the Wang family of Beihai was destined not to compromise. Therefore, although the leaders of that session did not choose a satisfactory spokesperson, they took advantage of the chaos of the Li family, the turmoil of the Southeast Group, and the silence of Beihai to place a large number of chess pieces in Beihai. These chess pieces quietly took root in Beihai, involving various fields, the Southeast Group and the Beihai core. Then it was another leader's effort. The chess pieces scattered in Beihai grew strong and grew, but they still did not choose a good spokesperson. In the middle of that session, Wang Qinglei appeared in everyone's sight. His age and his ability made him attract a lot of people's attention at the first time. At that time, Wang Qinglei was like the current Wang Jingxing. He was low-key and gentle, but extremely dazzling in the eyes of those who cared about him. This time the contact was unexpectedly smooth. The two sides almost hit it off. Wang Qinglei passed all the tests and inspections. In the past 10 years, every heavyweight of the Southeast Group had something to do with Wang Qinglei's behind-the-scenes operation. Similarly, every time Wang Qinglei was promoted with the support of the Southeast Group, it also had something to do with the academics in the Prince Group. What surprised Qin Fangqing and others most was that Wang Qinglei actually drew Wang Xiaoyao to his side. They didn't trust Wang Xiaoyao at first. The lineal descendant of Mount Dibing was either a single lineal descendant or a brother or a sister or a brother and a sister. For hundreds of years, the brothers who occupied the position of patriarch in Mount Dibing had never betrayed the clan. Wang Xiaoyao could be said to be the first case. Until now, Wang Xiaoyao had done a lot of things in secret. Even so, Qin Fangqing was still a little wary of him and did not pull Wang Xiaoyao into the core circle of their conspiracy against Beihai. But it had to be admitted that as Wang Xiaoyao approached Wang Qinglei, the two of them joined forces, and the arrangement inside Beihai province became easier. Today, the power of Wang Qinglei and Wang Xiaoyao, the power of the Vatican East Island, the Jiang family of South America, and the power of Zhongzhou state. Adding everything together, they already had enough power to shake the foundation of the North Sea. That was why Wang Qinglei said he wanted to turn the North Sea province upside down. Confident and crazy. What do you need from me? Qin Fangqing was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Give us enough credit." Wang Qinglei said. Qin Fangqing frowned. "You should know that we have never doubted you. Maybe we had an investigation before, but after so many years of cooperation, no one will doubt your position and determination." "I mean us," Wang Qinglei said blandly. "You mean Wang Xiaoyao?" Qin Fangqing narrowed his eyes. He is not only Wang Tianzong's younger brother, but also an invincible realm expert. At present, His Majesty Morade Jiangguochu Tianhai Wuji and Yagyu Kurumi. On the surface we have 5 invincible realm experts. And there is another invincible realm expert in the dark, who is the only invincible realm killer in the dark world. 6 people. This kind of strength is very strong. But facing the Wang family of Beihai, no one dares to say that we are 100% sure. If Li Tianlan joins forces with the Wang family of Beihai, who knows to what extent Li Tianlan's strength will be? Who knows to what extent the strength of Saint will be? Who is sure that the Dark Knights will not intervene? Who is sure that the Lin clan will stay out of it? There are too many variables in this matter. Pulling Wang Xiaoyao into this circle can only be good. Wang Qinglei said. He is just one person. What can he change? Qin Fangqing didn't take it seriously. Don't underestimate Wang Xiaoyao. Wang Qinglei laughed in a low voice. On the surface, although he just entered the invincible realm last year, in fact no one knows when he broke through the invincible realm. Maybe he alone can stop Li Tianlan. If Zhongzhou State warns Mount Shu, Seng can't act rashly. In Northern Europe, it has been a bit lively recently. Wang Xiaoyao and His Majesty can join forces in Northern Europe and make trouble in Northern Europe so that Flaming Fire can't get away. In the Lin clan, Wang Xiaoyao can also use the resources in his hands to join forces with the Jiang family of South America. They target the branch of the Lin clan in South America, and Lin Fengting will be busy with his own affairs. Do you understand? Wang Xiaoyao can play a key role in this chaos. Not to mention these, we can't ignore his own combat capability. He has been working with me for many years, but he has never entered this circle. Your concerns will also become his concerns. Chen Fangqing held the phone and didn't speak for a long time. Trust Wang Xiaoyao? He always felt that something was wrong. But there was no reason to doubt what Wang Xiaoyao had done in the past few years. The main reason was his identity. He was Wang Tianzong's younger brother. They had the same father and mother. I've always wondered why Wang Xiaoyao would betray Wang Tianzong with his identity? Chen Fangqing asked. He had raised this question, but Wang Qinglei's explanation was not thorough enough. Because of his name Wang Xiaoyao. Wang Tianzong's original intention was to let him be King Xiaoyao for a lifetime, the kind without power. But who would be willing to do so? Wang Tianzong is so dazzling. He was suppressed too much by my brother's side. That's it? Chen Fangqing shook his head subconsciously. Wang Qinglei was silent for a moment and continued, it also has something to do with Qin Weibai. Chen Fangqing paused slightly, narrowed his eyes and whispered, what do you mean? Wang Xiaoyao likes Qin Weibai. Wang Qinglei's voice was low. He doesn't pretend to like her. He really likes her. That kind of love and affection you may not be able to imagine. It can even be said that he thinks about her day and night. Wang Qinglei smiled. As far as I know, before Li Tianlan appeared, Wang Xiaoyao personally begged Wang Tianzong, hoping that Wang Tianzong would personally propose marriage to Samsara Palace. The conditions he offered were too outrageous, so Wang Tianzong refused. The two brothers quarreled for a long time. It is said that Wang Xiaoyao even knelt down, but Wang Tianzong never agreed. Later Wang Tianzong met Qin Weibai once. It is said that he wanted Qin Weibai to marry Wang Xingxiao. Obviously, a woman like Qin Weibai is very suitable to be the hostess of the Wang family of Beihai. Her role is even greater than that of summer solstice. There is no need to elaborate the details, but everything should be true. I think the estrangement between the two brothers began at that time. Wang Xiaoyao also began to test me at that time and gave me preliminary cooperation. Later, when Li Tianlan appeared, Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Tianzong lost their thoughts. So, Chen Fangqing's face softened. For a woman? Qin Weibai is not an ordinary woman. Wang Qinglei said lightly. Chen Fangqing was silent. Qin Weibai was indeed not an ordinary woman. Her perfection was from the inside out, from appearance to thought. In the eyes of outsiders, she was absolutely a perfect, almost evil or even terrible woman. If this kind of woman did not have Li Tianlan and wanted to take advantage of her own advantages, she definitely had the potential to ruin the country and the people. The first beauty of Zhongzhou State. Chen Fangqing had also heard of this title. But the funny thing was that the so-called first beauty of Zhongzhou State did not even have a nationality of Zhongzhou State. And the most important point. Wang Qinglei continued, in the content of my cooperation with Wang Xiaoyao, if we finally overthrow Mount Dibing, the new patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai will be him, not me. Chen Fangqing's body shook, and all the doubts in his heart seemed to be relieved in an instant. He smiled and said slowly, are you willing to do that? Wang Qinglei also smiled and did not speak. Chapter 8:10. When Yu Chuanguang walked into Wang Qinglei's office, there was dead silence in the office. As the owner, Wang Qinglei sat on the chair quietly and looked at the ceiling. He was as silent as a statue. Something on your mind? Yu Chuanguang smiled and asked casually. As the two biggest rebels of the Southeast Group, the relationship between Speaker Wuyue and the governor could no longer be described as harmonious. It was clear that the fate of the two had been firmly intertwined. For this reason, the difference between the duties of the governor and the speaker had become extremely blurred between the two. Under the overwhelming pressure from the outside world, the two who held Wuyue tightly in their hands were like true confidants, and there was no longer any courtesy between them. Wang Qinglei opened his eyes, glanced at him and shook his head silently. This movement was simple and pure. It did not mean to deny, but it showed endless exhaustion. This was the Wang Qinglei in Yu Chuanguang's eyes. In the eyes of the Southeast Group, he had wild ambitions. In the eyes of the Wang family of Beihai, he was unforgivable. In the eyes of Chen Fangqing, Li Huaqing and others he was crazy and extreme. In the hearts of many cadres of Wuye, he was deep and unpredictable. Different people had different Wang Qinglei in their hearts. In Yu Chuanguang's eyes, Wang Qinglei was just a bearer who was about to be completely crushed by the huge pressure. He had not been the governor of Wuye for a long time, but when he was in contact with Wang Qinglei in private, he had always been like this. Wang Qinglei knew that there might be some factors that wanted to lower his and Wang Xiaoyao's guard, but he also knew that during this period of time, these years, Wang Qinglei did not have a good time. Years of secret arrangements and plans were exposed little by little, and Wang Qinglei completely appeared in everyone's sight. In the crucial change of office only 1 year, the slightest movement in Zhongzhou state was enough to make Wang Qinglei highly nervous. It's okay. Yu Chuanguang sat down as if to comfort him, but his tone was calm and confident. It's just that Saint went to Mount Dibbing. It doesn't mean that he will cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. It's just a possibility. We don't have to be so nervous. How can it be so simple? Wang Qinglei shook his head and his voice was a little hoarse. Even if they really join hands, it's nothing. Yu Chuanguang said, Li Tianlan is indeed very strong, but he is not as strong as the rumors say. He is now the #1 expert in the dark world besides Lin Fengting. If he really dares to appear in Beihai, Xiaoyao can stop him. As for the other invincible realm experts who are related to him, you can handle the foreign ones and Xiaoyao can handle the domestic ones. In terms of pure strength, we still have the absolute upper hand. Wang Qinglei thought about it, smiled bitterly and lit a cigarette. That's true, but when I think about it carefully, I still feel a little uneasy. I don't know where the problem is or if I'm too worried about gains and losses. He took a deep drag on the cigarette, exhaled the smoke bit by bit and said softly, we can't afford to lose. Yu Chuanguang was silent for a moment, then nodded. He was indeed a sore loser. Wang Qinglei couldn't afford to lose. He could not afford to lose either. There was no doubt that he came to Wuye at great risk, or it could be said that he came to Wuye purely because of his friendship with Wang Xiaoyao. He used to be the mayor of Huading. In the eyes of most people, the mayor of a municipality serving as the governor of a province was definitely not a promotion, especially when Yu Chuanguang was the core of the Southeast Group. It was impossible for ordinary people to sit in the position of mayor of Huading. The Southeast Group sent him here to prepare to regain the supreme power of Huading. However, Yu Chuanguang chose Wuye, which directly caused the Southeast Group to be forced to give up the plan to take over Huading, or at least to postpone the plan for several years. He gave up the position of Zhongzhou State Councillor and Speaker of Huading. It was for the position of Zhongzhou State Councillor and Speaker of Wuye. If Wang Qinglei could go up next year, this position could only be his. This was the balance between Wang Qinglei and Wang Xiaoyao. Yu Chuanguang played the core role. Only when he completely controlled Wuye could Wang Xiaoyao control the Wang family of Beihai in the future. If Wang Qinglei couldn't go up, Yu Chuanguang would also lose the opportunity to enter the Zhongzhou State Parliament. Standing in this position, under the current situation, he and Wang Qinglei were facing the same situation. They were either soaring up the sky or falling straight into the abyss. Don't be too nervous. Yu Chuanguang was silent for a while, shook his head and said softly, it is very likely that the several invincible realm experts related to Li Tianlan will not participate in this matter. Li Tianlan is also so powerful that he makes people desperate. One more person won't affect the overall situation. Wang Qinglei nodded, muttered and said slowly, at present it seems so. He shook his head again. Anyway, the sooner the chaos happens the better. A long night is fraught with trouble. I can't afford to delay it. Xiaoyao also means the same. Yu Chuanguang said slowly, according to him, Mount Dibbing seems to have found something abnormal. At present, the work of investigating foreign forces is much more careful than before. They should have noticed something. It's too late. Wang Qinglei twitched the corner of his mouth, revealing a sneer. The little guy is still too inexperienced. When it came to the core members of the Wang family of Beihai, even if they were standing on the opposite side, Yu Chuanguang still didn't say anything. I don't want to wait anymore. Wang Qinglei said, they say that we need to be fully prepared. Hey, in fact, there is no such thing as complete. For me, half of the certainty is enough to take a gamble. I just talked to the Prime Minister on the phone. In principle, the Prime Minister agreed to use the power of Zhongzhou State in Beihai. But I still need to communicate with other comrades to make a final decision, especially some old comrades. I will be in Yuzhou during this period. You should pay more attention to Wuya. If there is anything, you can contact me and we will discuss it. Yu Chuanguang narrowed his eyes, nodded, and said with a smile, "Okay, have a safe trip." Wang Qinglei said yes and continued, "In addition, we need to inform Xiaoyao. If we are right, the girl Yuatong is the key to the successful cooperation between the Wang family of Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace. We'd better find her." "How can it be so easy?" Yu Chuanguang shook his head. "Little princess has only been familiar with a few places since she was a child. Beihai Yuzhou Wuya Huading. She has searched everywhere, but there is no news at all. Zhongzhou State is so big. If she wants to hide, finding her is as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. Anyway, we still have to try." Wang Qinglei said, "As for Wuyue, organize an investigation in the near future." Yu Chuanguang nodded and didn't say anything. He suddenly asked, "Whose idea is it to find little princess? Yours? Or the Prime Minister?" "It's the council's idea," Wang Qinglei said calmly. Yu Chuanguang said yes, and his eyes were a little cold. Chapter 8:11. It was not the first time for Saint to come to Mount Dibbing. Whether as the Sword Master of Mount Shu or as the Super Master of Samsara Palace, he had been here more than once. But this time was undoubtedly the best treatment he had ever received. Wang Xingxiao was well prepared in this regard. No one knew that Saint was here to take the coldness of 9 states, but everyone knew that Saint was here on behalf of Emperor Dong's palace. In this way, the Wang family of Beihai would not be too exaggerated in any way. The more ostentatious it was, the more close the relationship between the two sides could be shown, and the more it could make some people who were secretly ready to make trouble inside and outside the parliament worry. Mount Dibbing, which had been split by a sword, had been repaired a lot by the Wang family of Beihai regardless of the cost. At least it was no longer ugly. The mountain and the foot of the mountain had become green and brilliant again. The large construction site at the top of the mountain had been reduced to almost non-existence, but some details still needed to be adjusted and repaired. The helicopter landed directly on the tarmac at the top of Mount Dibbing. One by one, the important figures who played important roles in Beihai had begun to line up to greet them. A little farther away, the elites of the internal defense forces of the Wang family of Beihai were lining up. The full heaven punishment troop stood on the other side. Firmament, Enchantress, Xian Ming, and other well-known experts in the dark world stood on the other side of the heaven punishment troop. The patriarchs of the 7 major sword-holding families of Beihai province had all arrived. The sun was shining on Mount Dibbing, but it was silent. A solemn and chilling atmosphere surrounded the entire top of the mountain, iron-blooded and powerful. Saint got off the plane and watched all this silently. He did not think that the Wang family of Beihai wanted to scare him. But there was no doubt that at such a critical moment, the Wang family of Beihai was showing its strength to make those who cooperated with them feel at ease. Saint's eyes turned and finally fell on a woman. It was a woman who looked to be in her 40s. She was middle-aged, but her body was not bloated. Instead, she was extremely tall. She was about 1.9 meters tall and had a moderate figure. Her appearance was not considered beautiful. A shallow scar extended from her face to the back of her ear. She stood there quietly, motionless. Next to her, slightly behind her, were Firmament and Enchantress. Saint narrowed his eyes. He had never seen this woman. There was no such woman in the information of Samsara Palace. As if sensing Saint's gaze, the woman lifted her head and glanced at him before nodding slightly. Saint was expressionless, but the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He took a deep look at the man and asked, "Who is that?" "She's Phoenix." Wang Xingxiao smiled and said softly, "My aunt." After a pause he added, "Kiss auntie." Saint's pupils suddenly contracted. "Kiss my aunt?" Which also meant, was she Xia Zhi's biological sister? Phoenix? Saint had never heard of this name, nor had he heard of this code name, but he could clearly feel how powerful this person was. She just stood there quietly, but her faintly discernible aura seemed to cover Mount Dibbing. It was obscure but extremely strong and blazing. That kind of aura was not deliberately aimed at Saint, but it made him feel a clear sense of oppression. The other party was very strong. Even in the eyes of an invincible realm expert, the other party was probably incredibly strong. This kind of strength and sharpness had almost surpassed the so-called realm. It was not the first time Saint had seen such a person. There were also such people in Zhongzhou state, and there was more than one. Li Tianlan in this state was one of them. Tribulation before the chaos in Eastern Europe was also one of them. Saint took a deep breath, glanced at the direction of the woman and slowly said, "Sorry for my disrespect." The two sides were hundreds of meters apart. Phoenix slightly raised her head and glanced at him. Her body moved. The next second she had come directly to Saint. At that moment, in Saint's perception, it was like a beast suddenly pouncing on him. In an instant, the sword intent surged all over Saint's body. The bright sunlight seemed to be twisted around him for a moment, and countless sword energy were fighting. It was all out of instinct. He took a step forward as if he was about to make a move. The woman froze and took another step back, indicating that she had no malice. Saint took a deep breath, suppressed the sword energy and shook his head. "Sorry," he whispered, "my realm is not stable. I'm a little impolite." "Very strong." Phoenix's eyes lit up completely. "I heard that he is a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou state. If you are not busy, let's have a fight." "Auntie, he came here to take away a very important thing for the person in Emperor Dong's palace, not to fight." Wang Xingxiao smiled bitterly. "The one in the desert?" Phoenix slightly raised her eyebrows and thought for a moment. "In a year, if he has grown up, I should not be his opponent." Wang Xingxiao did not speak. Phoenix took another look at Saint. "Let's have a fight." She used a declarative sentence. "Not today." Saint was a little regretful. "I'm in a hurry to go back." Phoenix said, "I'm not interested in the cooperation between you. Whether Emperor Dong's palace and Beihai are enemies or friends, as long as they don't provoke me, I won't intervene. Leave an address and I'll find it when things here are over." Her words were a little contradictory. And she was extremely straightforward. Saint was a little confused. "Auntie came here to wait for second uncle. Except for second uncle, she won't care about anything in Beihai." Wang Xingxiao sighed and said softly. Saint suddenly nodded to show that he understood. Many people in Zhongzhou state knew that Summer Solstice's family had a complicated relationship with Mount Dibing. Summer Solstice married Wang Tianzong and was dead set on him. Everyone thought that this matter was over. But if Phoenix was Summer Solstice's younger sister, then she naturally had no good feelings for Mount Dibing. But why did she come here to deal with Wang Xiaoyao? Saint recalled the information about Samsara Palace again, but he could not find any clues. He could only temporarily suppress his doubts. Anyway, Phoenix's arrival could be regarded as adding a top combat force to Mount Dibing. Even if she was only responsible for dealing with Wang Xiaoyao, her role could not be ignored. "What realm is it?" Saint asked slowly. "Ice condensing mirror." Phoenix's tone was calm and natural. "Chi controlling, ice condensing, fire flaming, thunder shocking. Invincible." Saint froze for a while and finally laughed. He seemed to think this matter was very interesting. "Okay." He nodded and said, "This is my phone number. When this matter is over, you can come to Yuzhou to find me." Phoenix nodded and turned to leave. Saint narrowed his eyes and looked around again. Only then did he find that at this time on Mount Dibing, there were some relatively strange or completely strange faces. The so-called relatively strange referred to the fact that they had never appeared on Mount Dibing before, but they existed in the secret database of Emperor Dong's palace. And completely strange meant that they were really completely strange. There was no doubt that the Wang family of Beihai had been fully prepared to deal with the upcoming chaos. Saint looked around and whispered to himself, "There is still one less invincible realm expert." "What invincible realm?" Wang Xingxiao was a little confused. "Nothing." Saint smiled and said, "Let's go and get the sword." Chapter 8:12. The black blade of coldness of 9 states shone with a dark luster under the bright light. All the staff in the laboratory had left early. Not long after the ultra-high temperature furnace went out, the empty hall was silent and scorching. The two halves of the divine weapon were placed on a huge platform. It was deep and heavy. It was quiet. It was a little cold. Even desolate. Saint's palm slowly touched the cold blade. The sword intent of coldness of 9 states seemed to resonate with his palm, but it was a little slow and looked weak. Saint's eyes were a little regretful or pitiful. What a pity. Winner takes all. Wang Xingxiao stood beside him, calm and emotionless. Saint nodded and then shook his head. He looked at coldness of 9 states, narrowed his eyes slightly and whispered, "How about coming with me?" Coldness of 9 states already had its own will. Perhaps it was not as smart as Shen Yuanfeng and could not express its emotions, but strictly speaking, it was also a life now, just a little ignorant. Saint gently tapped on the blade of coldness of 9 states and whispered, "I'll take you to find the other you." The blade of coldness of 9 states suddenly shook. An indistinct emotion spread out from the sword. There was some hesitation, some reluctance, and some yearning. After all, swords and people were different. People might need some other things to understand what Shen Yuanfeng was. But the ignorant coldness of 9 states would not. In Eastern Europe, when the two swords collided in an instant, it could already understand that it was another version of itself. A more complete version of itself. It was cut off by the other version of itself. Saint looked at it quietly, feeling its reluctance, and didn't say anything. He didn't know if it was the same when the Wang family of Beihai handed coldness of 9 states to Dongqing Huangtu for the first time many years ago or many years later. But any life longed for completeness and freedom. So he didn't say anything more and waited quietly. Crack. In the clear sound of collision, the two broken blades of coldness of 9 states collided slightly and seemed to have made a decision. The two blades moved slightly towards Saint and quickly shrank. Saint held out his palm. Coldness of 9 states, which had become extremely soft, wrapped Saint's finger and spread all the way up, finally turning into a black arm guard. Saint lowered his head and touched the arm guard, feeling a little happy. He turned around and looked at Wang Xingxiao. "Are you leaving after dinner?" Wang Xingxiao smiled calmly. He seemed to be emotionless, but at the same time he seemed to be suppressing all his emotions. From this moment on, the first murderous weapon that had accompanied the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years left the Wang family of Beihai. In its long life in the future, it would accompany another chosen one. This fact was bloody for everyone in the Wang family of Beihai. But Wang Xingxiao didn't show anything. For the first time, Saint sensed an unfathomable shrewdness from the new patriarch of North Sea. This was something that even Li Tianlan did not have. A hint of wariness flashed across his eyes, and he shook his head. "No need," he said softly, "I'm in a hurry to go back. I can't leave the hospital for too long." Wang Xingxiao was silent for a moment and nodded. "All right." He gestured for Saint to leave with him and asked softly, "How are the injuries of the two princes?" Since they were cooperating, Saint didn't mind revealing some information. He shook his head and said, "Not very good. Today, many wounded people from the chaos in Eastern Europe were still living in the hospital he guarded. More than a year had passed, and some people had left the hospital, such as Gong Sun Chi and Yi of the 4 spirit generals. Black Tortoise would also leave the hospital in the near future. In the hospital he guarded, the two people with the most serious injuries were also the two with the strongest strength. Tribulation. Lishi. Their injuries still did not improve. So far in the battle in Eastern Europe, the two were still in a deep coma, and there was no improvement. Li Shi's position was unclear. If Tribulation could wake up, the first expert in the Dark World might not be Lin Fengting. Now, an invincible realm killer with the code name Ju had become the top killer in the Dark World and stood at the top. If Tribulation could wake up and recover, no one could imagine how terrible a super assassin who had crossed the boundary of the peak of the invincible realm would be. Wang Xingxiao nodded. Hearing the news, he didn't know whether his mood was good or bad. The helicopter on the tarmac was on standby after being resupplied. Saint shook hands with Wang Xingxiao and didn't say much. He boarded the helicopter and left Mount Dibing directly. Next, he would go to Zhongyuan to deliver the coldness of 9 states, and then return to Yuzhou as fast as possible to guard those seriously injured people standing beside Li Tianlan. Wang Xingxiao stood on the tarmac and looked up at the helicopter taking off. It went farther and farther in the air and finally became a small black dot. He didn't speak for a long time. Without a sound, the tall phoenix walked over. Her footsteps were as light as a large cat's. "This man is very strong." She looked up at the direction where the helicopter left and said slowly, "How can the deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace not be strong?" Wang Xingxiao said quietly, "According to our analysis, although he is over 40 years old, he is still very likely to step into the peak of the invincible realm. His foundation is too stable." Phoenix nodded and said yes. "Did he take the coldness of 9 states?" Phoenix asked. Wang Xingxiao said yes. "He took the murderous weapon human emperor?" She repeated it again. Wang Xingxiao's eyebrows moved and he said yes again. "Ha." Phoenix laughed and said with some sarcasm, "The Wang family of Beihai is really a big family." Wang Xingxiao didn't say anything. "Everyone is worried about the future of Beihai. I don't think there is anything to worry about." Phoenix sneered slightly. How can such a big family business collapse in an instant? You are now the patriarch of Beihai. Today you send human emperor, tomorrow you send the troops of all heavens, the day after tomorrow you send the immortality potion, and if you can't, send half of Beihai. There is a long time in the future and Beihai is so big. Wang Xingxiao frowned suddenly, looked at Phoenix and said slowly, "Who told you that I'm sending the family business?" "I don't need someone to tell me." Phoenix said faintly, "That's the truth. No matter how big the foundation of Beihai is, it is impossible to disdain murderous weapons. If you tell me that human emperor is not the family business of the Wang family of Beihai, I will believe it. Even if you say that you have 10,000 human emperors, I will believe it as long as you believe it yourself. I'm very happy to see Beihai like this." She turned slowly. "But I still feel sorry for my sister. The Wang family of Beihai doesn't need anyone to feel sorry for her or pity her." Wang Xingxiao said softly, "Of course the Wang family of Beihai won't have 10,000 human emperors. But you are right about one thing. The Wang family of Beihai is indeed a big family business." He looked at Phoenix's back and said faintly, "I can give human emperor because the Wang family of Beihai has something better than human emperor. And why don't you understand such a simple truth?" Chapter 8:13. Late at night. The dishes on the table, which had been warmed several times, were now completely cold. The fragrant tea leaves also became bland and tasteless. Qin Weibai took a sip of water. Her fingers gently moved the mouse, and she quickly and attentively flipped through the files on the computer. The computer screen, which was much wider than an ordinary person's, was split into two. On the left screen, dense and complicated data flowed slowly, while on the right screen the military advisor was talking non-stop. Qiushui City. As far as we know, Wang Xiaoyao established a reliable cooperative relationship with Huangfu Renjia about 3 years ago. The reason for the cooperation was that Wang Xiaoyao helped Huangfu Renjia catch a fugitive who was very important to the Huangfu family and helped him become the second in command of the Huangfu family's intelligence system. In the video, the military counselor looked down at the documents and said in an orderly manner, "At present we can confirm that Huangfu Renjia has 6 secret locations, 4 in Qiushui City and 2 in Kanglan City. There are 5 locations that are highly suspicious, and we can provide you with 2 locations." Any information transfer was complicated and cumbersome, especially the entanglement and transactions between several major forces. Emperor Dong's palace, Samsara Palace, Wang family of Beihai. On this day the intelligence of the 3 major forces was completely intertwined. Li Tianlan was nurturing his sword. The parliament of Zhongzhou state could not wait any longer. The Wang family of Beihai remained calm and collected. Qin Weibai had to try her best to control the situation while Li Tianlan was silent and delay the chaos in Beihai. The most important part of the job was the transfer of information. She needed to choose someone whom she could trust and who was also trusted by the Wang family of Beihai. Then he passed the information to him. Then he handed it over to Wang Xingxiao. He asked Wang Xingxiao to use the power of Mount Dibbing to eliminate some threats in Beihai. But for Li Tianlan, the most favorable situation was that the chaos of the Wang family of Beihai broke out a little later, instead of being completely nipped in the bud. Thus, a portion of this information had to be hidden. What kind of information should be given, what kind of information should not be given, how to eliminate the threat of North Sea in the near future, and how to ensure that North Sea would definitely fall into chaos in the near future, these were all things that needed to be studied in detail. To put it simply, if this piece of information was to be handed over to Mount Dibbing as a weapon to attack the dark forces, then they must first determine the point of attack. Which 2 locations? On the still dark screen the hoarse voice rang out. "Come on. One is at Qiushui City Pier number 3, and the other is at Kanglan City Riverside Club," military counselor said. After a brief silence, the hoarse voice sounded again, "Out of these 2 locations, Kanglan City must be eliminated." "Reason?" military counselor asked. "This place is a little close to the other hiding spots you provided, and there are some connections that can't be made clear in a short time. Some of the relationships within the North Sea are very complicated, and there are some joints that I haven't seen clearly until now. If we make a move on this place, it may lead to the exposure of other hiding spots in Kanglan City that can't be exposed. The impact will be huge, so it's better not to make a move." "In that case," military counselor remained silent. Nowadays, several superpowers' lurking forces had almost spread all over Beihai. These lurking sites rarely existed in isolation. Generally they were in a line either long or short. Kanglan City, the lurking site, involved at least 3 places. If they gave up, it meant that they would have 3 less places to give to Mount Dibbing. 3 seemed like a small number. But they didn't reveal much to Mount Dibbing. So it seemed that these 3 points were very useful. The number 2 spot in Queen City can be given to Mount Dibbing. I'll take care of other problems. In the dark screen, the voice was still unhurried. How sure are you? Military counselor asked in a deep voice. He didn't doubt the position and ability of the other party, but he had to be careful about this matter. If he represented Samsara Palace now, then the other party represented Emperor Dong's palace. Although Li Tianlan didn't know of his existence, he had been doing things for the Li family all these years. In the sequence of the Li family, he had no name, only a code name. Migres. This was a person who had given almost everything for the Li family. In order to hide his identity and not expose it, he even gave up his only daughter in a difficult choice. For more than 20 years, his loyalty had never changed. After Li Hong had died, he naturally regarded Li Tianlan as the young master. Today, the information of the 2 sides was completely shared. Saint passed all the information he had to Migres, and then the 2 of them confirmed the attack points one by one. Now it was coming to an end. Once all the information was confirmed, Migres would take this incomplete but helpful information to Mount Dibbing to see Wang Xingxiao to deter the several dark forces lurking in Beihai, delay their plans and make them more cautious. In military counselor's view, the point proposed by Migres shouldn't have been exposed. 100% sure. Migres said lightly, "Don't worry, I can handle it." Listen to him. Qin Weibai, who had been silently looking at the computer, suddenly said. Saint froze for a moment and then stopped talking. "When you finish sorting it out, send me a copy of the specific information." Qin Weibai continued. "What?" Migres asked. "The reason is the same as the last time I asked you to find Wang Xingxiao." Qin Weibai's eyes flickered slightly. "I'll add some things to the information and test it again." Migres was silent for a moment and was a little confused. "You don't trust Wang Xiaoyao? Or you don't trust his current position?" "He is not trustworthy in the first place." Qin Weibai said, "And it's not a matter of trust or not. I just want to make sure again. He should know very well that Yagyu Kurasumi didn't go to Jinling City some time ago. Wang Xingxiao doesn't know about this." Migres's voice was low. "It doesn't mean anything." Qin Weibai shook her head. "In this matter, no matter how cautious we are, we can't be too careful." Migres was silent for a moment and said, I see." Qin Weibai said no more and continued to sort out the documents. She looked more and more serious and focused. Military counselor glanced at her with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. This seemingly natural transaction contained too much cautiousness and intrigue. Qin Weibai had devoted herself to the coming chaos in Beihai. Military counselor naturally knew why. Because of 2 words. Not convinced. That was all. She didn't know whether he was not convinced by himself or not convinced by her. In the past, whenever she or that person was so focused, something big always happened in the dark world. For example, the final battle in Heaven Capital. Another example was the chaos in Eastern Europe. Compared with the other Qin Weibai, the current Qin Weibai might still be a little immature. She couldn't do it as easily as that person. But at this time she really tried her best to control everything. Whether that was her other self or not, she didn't want to lose. Military counselor took a deep breath, reached out his hand, knocked on the table and whispered, "Let's study it." Chapter 8:14. At 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, Migres and military counselor finally completed the handover of the report. The complicated information network was sorted into a relatively simple network map in the shortest time and handed over to Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai changed some of the things and even deliberately left some clues. Then she confirmed the information that was finally delivered to the Wang family of Beihai. Migres went offline immediately. Qin Weibai leaned against the chair and gently rubbed her eyebrows. "Do you still think there's something wrong with Wang Xiaoyao?" Military counselor asked slowly. "If there's something wrong with him, he has already gone too far. He didn't even leave any leeway." "I don't think there's something wrong with him," Qin Weibai said softly. "It's just that he can't be fine." Her voice was soft and firm. It was not a problem that she thought it was. It was a fact. There must be something wrong with Wang Xiaoyao now. "Why are you so sure?" "He may have a problem with Wang Tianzong, but it's definitely not to the extent of fighting with Mount Dibbing to the death. He wants to take power and be promoted. These may be true, but he can't completely fall out with Mount Dibbing," Qin Weibai said softly. In fact, he has already done it. Military counselor said calmly, without him, several dark forces can't hide so many people in Beihai province. According to our estimation, there are more than 5 digits of people lurking in various cities of Beihai province. This number is updated every day, but what remains unchanged are the elites. Once chaos breaks out, the entire Beihai will be covered with blood. From the standpoint of Mount Dibbing, he is unforgivable. This is the crux of the problem. Qin Weibai got up and poured herself a glass of water. She said slowly, he has done something that he can't do. He must be plotting something. I never doubt Wang Xiaoyao's standpoint, or his standpoint has nothing to do with me. I just think that when he is secretly planning something, maybe we can use this to get greater benefits. Military counselor opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't say it in the end. The computer screen shrank for a moment. Military counselor's figure shrank. Saint, who was reconnected, appeared on the screen. The coldness of 9 states has been sent to Zhongyuan. Academician Dongqing has begun to study it. I've been watching. At present there is no progress. Saint, who had already returned to Yuzhou Hospital, said. He glanced at the military advisor, raised his eyebrows slightly and asked directly, "You haven't gone offline yet?" "I've been so busy that I haven't even caught my breath yet." "Where should I go offline?" The military counselor was baffled. "Didn't you arrest Hua Xingyang to inspect Huading today?" Saint said, "Oh, it's past 12 o'clock now. That was yesterday." The military counselor was stunned for a moment. He slapped his forehead and said, "I forgot. Actually, I didn't pick him up yesterday. We agreed to have dinner together. Did I offend someone?" Saint chuckled and did not say anything. "Has the fusion direction of Xinyuan Feng and Chill of the 9 states been decided?" Qin Weibai interrupted the two and asked directly. There was no doubt that Dongqing Wujin was a well-deserved weapon development expert in Zhongzhou State, especially in terms of individual weapons. He was second to none in the world. The 2 models of sniper rifles of the Dongqing clan, Mad Strike and Sky Attack, had proved this. The small optical camouflage system on individual equipment could also prove this. For the entire Zhongzhou State, he was more than just a top talent. The existence of Dongqing Wujin was completely an authoritative figure in the field of individual weapons. The direction is the same as last time. Saint said, he means that the power of Xinyuan Feng doesn't need to be improved anymore. The only shortcoming now is the charging speed. After the fusion, Xinyuan Feng can not only bear the sword intent of Tianlan, but it can also be charged and used as a murderous weapon to speed up its energy absorption. This is the best choice. Qin Weibai nodded and didn't express any opinion. She just said softly, Migres will soon give the intelligence that the Wang family of Beihai needs to Wang Xingxiao. The first wave of chaos in Beihai province is coming, but this time it will be led by Mount Dibbing. The Vatican, East Island, and the Jiang family of South America will all have some people lurking in Beihai. You two need to discuss this because we also need some usable people to lurk in Beihai. Whether it's to deal with future variables or the coming war, they are useful. In addition, we also need a group of people to support Beihai. What do you think? Saint looked at the military counselor. The remaining forces of the Samsara Palace were in the hands of the military counselor, and these forces would be integrated into Emperor Dong's palace bit by bit in the future. This operation might be the first step for the forces of the Samsara Palace to be integrated into Emperor Dong's palace. I have a lot of suitable people here. Military counselor said indifferently, but I need to figure out one thing. Are these forces lurking in Beihai to target other forces lurking in Beihai, or to compete with the Wang family of Beihai in the future? Both. Qin Weibai glanced at him. Then divide the list into 2 parts. One part will be hidden in the dark and stay dormant for a long time to strengthen our current forces in Beihai. The other part will be responsible for dealing with other forces. Emperor Dong's palace can also send some people, Saint said. The power of Mount Shu could hardly be used in this operation. Although the parliament had not talked to him until now, Saint knew very well that he himself might be under all kinds of restrictions. But the elites of Emperor Dong's palace could be used by Li Tianlan. The starting point of Emperor Dong's palace was extremely high. The main combat force under Li Tianlan's command were the best chosen from the graduates of the Deep Sea Academy and the Sky Academy. They had just graduated more than a year ago and might have seemed immature. But now they were strong enough to be a force that could not be ignored. But the people of Emperor Dong's palace have to wait for Tianlan to make up his mind. Saint said. That day won't be too far away. Qin Weibai rubbed the cup with both hands and said indifferently, You are the deputy palace master. You can take out a list first and try to be as detailed as possible. Saint nodded and did not say anything else. Qin Weibai turned off the video and the computer. Her gaze was distant, looking in the direction of the North Sea province. Countless conspiracies and plots had begun to evolve and spread in the land that had been stable for hundreds of years. Emperor Dong's palace, Samsara Palace, Mount Dibing, the Parliament. The Jiang family of South America, the Vatican, East Island, King Xiaoyao of Snow Mountain. There were also countless forces in the dark world that were ready to make trouble. Everyone's eyes were focused on Beihai, the place where demons danced. Qin Weibai smiled. Her eyes were bright and full of expectation. Chapter 8:15. The cooperation between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai was very smooth. After both sides made satisfactory conditions, on the afternoon of the second day after Wang Xingxiao returned to Mount Dibing from the desert prison, a piece of intelligence about entering Beihai through special channels had appeared in front of Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao was meditating on the stage of formidable person. The breeze of Beihai blew. The letter in Xianming's hand shook slightly as the wind blew. Wang Xingxiao looked at the letter in Xianming's hand. His eyes flickered slightly and he asked, "Is it all here?" Xianming nodded and said yes. He was the chief intelligence officer of the Wang family of Beihai and was responsible for the intelligence agencies of the Wang family of Beihai all over the world. Mount Dibing cooperated with Emperor Dong's palace. In terms of intelligence, Emperor Dong's palace naturally had to hand it over to him. No one could say anything. Wang Xingxiao reached out and took the envelope. The envelope was very thin. It was conceivable that there was not much content in it, but it was very important. A complicated look flashed in Wang Xingxiao's eyes. Emperor Dong's palace could send part of the intelligence so quickly, which meant a lot. First of all, this was definitely not the intelligence force of Emperor Dong's palace lurking in Beihai. To be precise, it should be the force of Samsara Palace. This letter completely meant that even if the master of Samsara Palace had fallen, Samsara Palace, which had always regarded the Wang family of Beihai as its imaginary enemy, still had trustworthy elite intelligence agencies operating inside Beihai province. However, looking at the content of this letter, it seemed that even if Samsara Palace still had hidden forces in Beihai, it seemed that there were not many. Because Emperor Dong's palace provided very little information. Very little but extremely accurate. Wang Xingxiao was not sure if the other party had hidden information. But at least if the content of the letter was true, Emperor Dong's palace did provide a very good clue. This was a very timely news. There are only two places. The intelligence of Samsara Palace is sure that there are elites of East Island lurking in Beihai in these two places. They are in Xingzhou and Floating Island. Wang Xingxiao handed the envelope to Xianming and said quietly, "Compare them." Xianming took the letter and glanced at it. He frowned and said, "If the news is true, then these two places are indeed out of our control." Of course, the Wang family of Beihai was not blind or stupid. Since he knew the actions of several dark forces, Wang Xingxiao had immediately after ordering the investigation of the entire Beihai province, the intelligence agency of Mount Dibing had been fully operational. In the past, they did not guard against Wang Xiaoyao and knew very little about his private life. Naturally, they did not know some of his secret strongholds. But nothing could be really flawless. As long as they carefully investigated, there would always be some flaws. Xianming almost wholeheartedly focused on this, looking for clues bit by bit. The work had progressed to the present and there had been some results. However, the time was very short. At present, they had only determined a general direction. The information given by the Samsara Palace was in Xingzhou City and Floating Island City. Xianming hadn't found any clues in these two places yet. The intelligence of Samsara Palace was indeed helpful. A good clue, isn't it? Wang Xingxiao said calmly, "Send a group of people out and start with these two clues. Try to dig out more information and find out all the rats lurking in front of our house. Don't leave any alive." Xianming was stern inwardly. He nodded solemnly. "I will do it immediately." Wang Xingxiao agreed and said intentionally or unintentionally, "Are there enough people? If not, transfer some people here. Jiangnan society also has people in Beihai, right? Let them join in." Xianming was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay." In the sequence of the Wang family of Beihai, Jiangnan society was responsible for the intelligence agency of the entire Zhongzhou state, and Beihai province was undoubtedly a part of Zhongzhou state. So there was a very interesting situation. Nominally, Xianming was Lu Shuanghua's leader, but in fact, it was difficult for him to lead Lu Shuanghua. Wang Tianzong didn't seem to notice this at the beginning, but when something really happened, people could realize how subtle this move was. Intelligence agencies had always been sensitive. Putting Lu Shuanghua and Xianming in a position of mutual restraint was undoubtedly a check and balance. Now Wang Xingxiao asked Lu Shuanghua's people to join in. There was no doubt that it was also a check and balance. The slight discomfort in Xianming's heart quickly disappeared. He didn't think that Wang Xingxiao was seizing power. However, in the current critical situation, the intelligence work was really not suitable for him to act arbitrarily. It could be said that Wang Xingxiao was guarding against him. From another perspective, it was also Wang Xingxiao's protection for him. Xianming smiled. I will call Shuanghua right away and ask him to lead the elites of Jiangnan society to Beihai. Wang Xingxiao nodded and took a deep look at Xianming. It seemed that everything was said in silence. Now that we have reached an agreement with Emperor Dong's palace, we don't need to be polite about some things. They can reach into our home to give us information, so we naturally have to return the favor. Since it is cooperation, we can't let our ally think that we know nothing about him, right? Wang Xingxiao said with a smile. Xianming narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? As far as I know, after the fall of the master of Samsara Palace hid a lot of things, including a lot of people, a lot of resources, a lot of experts. You draw up a list and give some of the people that Samsara Palace hides and thinks we still don't know to Samsara Palace. Tell them that this is my idea. I hope they can appear on the battlefield in Beihai. Wang Xingxiao said calmly. Xianming hesitated for a moment and agreed. The intelligence work of the Wang family of Beihai was naturally not only responsible for its own territory, but also collecting the movements and secrets of other forces. It could even be said to be the most important part of the intelligence work. The hostility that Samsara Palace showed to the Wang family of Beihai was so obvious. How could the Wang family of Beihai not make preparations? Now, it seemed like it was time for these preparations to be put to use. In addition, Emperor Dong's palace has been developing well recently. We should also draw up a list for Emperor Dong's palace. If we make a big move, Li Tianlan can't refuse. But I want Zhongzhou State to see Emperor Dong's attitude. Wang Xingxiao continued, at least one of the figures standing in the public eye in Emperor Dong's palace should come. Xianming nodded again. Wang Xingxiao said no more and watched Xianming's back slowly disappear from the stage of formidable person. The setting sun on the horizon slowly sank into Beihai. Dusk was approaching. The tides of Beihai rose and fell. Standing on the ancient stone platform, Wang Xingxiao walked to the edge and stared at Beihai in the distance. Wisps of sword energy spread from afar with the tide. It was overwhelming. Sword energy was fighting over the stage of formidable person in Beihai. It was like the heartbeat of the sky. Wang Xingxiao was surrounded by sword energy. He took a deep breath and his eyes became calmer and deeper. Chapter 8:16. The night was getting darker. Mount Dibing became brightly lit. Recently, the security measures on Mount Dibing had been upgraded by several levels under Wang Xingxiao's personal intervention. After he came back from the desert prison yesterday, he officially ordered that Mount Dibing would enter a state of war from that day on. Wang Xingxiao officially signed the expansion document of the Internal Defense Force of Mount Dibing at noon that day. The document had been officially issued to the Beihai Corps. The new vice-marshal of the Beihai Corps, Firmament, had begun to study the list. Wang Xingxiao made it clear that in the next week to half a month, the scale of the Internal Defense Force of Mount Dibing would be expanded from 13,000 people to 30,000 people. It was necessary to ensure that there would be no less than 15,000 combatants on Mount Dibing 24 hours a day. Today Mount Dibing was very busy and lively. The camp of the Internal Defense Force on the mountainside was expanding. A large number of weapons began to be installed in countless corners of Mount Dibing. The Internal Defense Force began to have patrol codes. Everything was arranged one by one, clear and distinct. The entire Mount Dibing seemed to have suddenly become an unbreakable and indestructible war fortress. With a large number of armaments and new elite combatants settled in the night, Mount Dibing, which had been completely destroyed and began to slowly recover, looked extremely powerful and ferocious in the night. A middle-aged man who looked travel-worn stood quietly at the foot of Mount Dibing. The light illuminated the foot of Mount Dibing as if it were daytime. He stood quietly in the light, looking up at Mount Dibing quietly, motionless and silent. One patrol team after another slowly walked past him, carefully observing the surrounding environment. The density of the entire Mount Dibbing was several times higher than before. The atmosphere on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain was solemn and rigorous. But it didn't seem so nervous. The slowly moving white light once again swept over the middle-aged man. The monitoring system on Mount Dibbing didn't respond. The patrol team that constantly passed by him also didn't respond. A small space around the middle-aged man seemed to be slightly wrinkled. The wrinkles completely covered his body, but only covered his body, blocking all the light, shadow and heat. Under the light, he was like a ghost standing in the nothingness. It was quiet on Mount Dibbing with a touch of serenity in the solemnity. He looked up at Beihai seriously, sizing it up bit by bit as if he was feeling something. Mount Dibbing was still the same. But he vaguely noticed that Mount Dibbing seemed to be different from the past. At the very least, it was different from the last time he came. What had changed here was not the terrain that had been changed by that mysterious prodigy's sword. Instead, it was a vague but real feeling, or rather, a change. He didn't know what he was looking for here. If he was a specter, then he was searching for another specter. Wisps of sword chi spread under his feet. The invisible and majestic sword chi was like a huge net, spreading out on the ground along the soles of his feet. In an instant, it had enveloped thousands of meters around the foot of the mountain. Within the scope of the sword chi, every grass and every tree at the foot of Mount Dibbing was clearly sensed by him. But there was nothing. He frowned, hesitated, and took a step forward. The light faded into the distance. He stood on the mountainside. It seemed that there was no longer the strict surveillance at the foot of the mountain, but the overall defense was even more dense. Chaos was coming to Beihai. The actions between the Vatican East Island and the Jiang family of South America had become more and more obvious. The several superpowers had not revealed their intention to Beihai yet, but their cooperation was gradually exposed. Wang Xingxiao, who realized that the enemy was approaching, set up defenses throughout Beihai. But he did not ignore the defense of Mount Dibbing. Everyone knew very well that no matter what the goals of the superpowers were, no matter how chaotic Beihai would be, the final location of this war would be Mount Dibbing. This was the place where Wang Xingxiao prepared the final battle. The sword chi continued to spread. In the middle-aged man's perception, in the dark corners, countless elites of the Wang family of Beihai were lurking and observing the situation on the mountain. A large number of long-range snipers, fire-flaming realm and occasionally thunder-shocking realm experts. His expression was calm as he searched quickly. The dense sword intent continued to spread, surging unceasingly. No one found his trace. Even when he was doing all this, he was standing next to a thunder-shocking realm expert from the Wang family of Beihai. The two sides were less than 2 meters away from each other, but the other side had been observing the front. There was still silence on the mountainside. His expression did not change at all. He just narrowed the range of the sword intent and searched more carefully. The night was getting darker. After the night. When dawn was about to break, he had searched the entire mountainside of Mount Dibbing. He found nothing. The top of the mountain was ahead. He frowned and continued to go up. The tide rose and fell. The tide-like sword chi on the stage of formidable person began to retreat to Beihai. Wang Xingxiao, who had been in the most focused state of meditation, slowly opened his eyes, feeling refreshed. He slowly stood up and looked at the still dark night over Beihai. He looked extremely comfortable. The majestic and unimaginable sword chi was pulled out little by little from the stage of formidable person. This sword chi seemed to have merged with every drop of water in Beihai. It was extremely soft and incredibly tolerant. Wang Xingxiao gently raised his palm. The invisible sword chi retreated from his hand to Beihai. Such a touch was invisible to the naked eye. But the feeling was extremely clear. It was strand after strand of sword chi that revolved without end, and they seemed to be formed by nature and were flawless. Every rotation of the sword chi seemed to represent the real supreme swordsmanship. The sword chi that surged to the stage of formidable person did not appear for a long time. But no one knew that Wang Xingxiao had broken through several small realms in just a few days while surrounded by the sword chi. Every time he meditated, it could be said that he truly advanced by leaps and bounds. The sword chi that was integrated with the sea was like his biggest thought and the most invincible inheritance of Beihai. He closed his eyes and faced the ocean as if he was reluctant to part with it. Streams of sword chi appeared around him one after another, spinning continuously. It seemed that the sword chi of the same origin had merged instantly. Wang Xingxiao straightened his body. His perception was magnified infinitely in an instant. He felt the torrent on the seemingly calm sea of Beihai. He felt the sharpness and purity of the sword chi traveling in the sea. The vast Beihai was slightly stirring. The sword chi merged. His perception kept flying away and he felt the other side of the sword chi. Wang Xingxiao gently raised the corner of his mouth. He waved in that direction and said good morning. In the next second, the majestic sword chi suddenly reversed its direction. Wang Xingxiao was passively integrated with the sword chi. A small amount of sword chi gathered on the stage of formidable person, pulling Wang Xingxiao's perception to cover the top of Mount Dibing. The pavilions, the chirping of birds, and the patrolling internal security troops all appeared in his perception. A familiar figure was standing in front of a palace in the center of the top of the mountain, staring at the palace as if thinking about whether to go in or not. The palace was located in the center of the top of the mountain. It could be said to be the largest palace on Mount Dibing. Emperor Hall. The palace. The place where the patriarchs of the Wang family of Beihai lived. Although Wang Xingxiao had never lived in it, it could be said to be his residence now. No, the entire Beihai could be said to be his. Wang Xingxiao suddenly opened his eyes and his pupils contracted rapidly. He subconsciously took out his phone and found Firmament's number. But after thinking for a while he put the phone back. Then, without any hesitation, he walked down the stage of formidable person and went directly to Emperor Hall. He was the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. No matter what he faced, there was no possibility for him to retreat or hide. Especially on Mount Dibing. The patrols passed by Wang Xingxiao one by one, and everyone greeted him respectfully. Wang Xingxiao responded with a smile and didn't say much. He didn't blame the patrol team for not discovering the distinguished guest, who had rashly come to the door. With that person's current strength, if he didn't want to be discovered, no matter where he appeared, few people could find him. Making things difficult for these ordinary elites would only disappoint them. When approaching Emperor Hall, he waved his hand to call a patrol captain over, pointed to the direction of the kitchen and said with a chuckle, "Go tell the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Make it rich." The captain saluted and quickly rushed to the kitchen. Wang Xingxiao carefully tidied up his clothes and slowly walked to Emperor Hall. The darkness on the horizon began to recede slowly. Dawn was coming and there was a hazy shimmer on Mount Dibing. Near Emperor Hall, all the elites of the internal security troops raised their hands and saluted as soon as they saw Wang Xingxiao. Everyone was respectful but also a little confused. Because Wang Xingxiao had been on the stage of formidable person since he became the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. He had never stayed here for a night. What was wrong with him today? Wang Xingxiao nodded and didn't say much. He just looked at Emperor Hall, which was close at hand. The sword energy on the stage of formidable person had retreated to the deep sea. In front of Wang Xingxiao, there was no one else except this luxurious palace and the elites of the internal security troops. Or rather, there was no one else. But Wang Xingxiao couldn't see it. Wang Xingxiao laughed at himself and walked over with the memory he had just felt. This position, if he was right, should be standing right next to him. The shimmer on the horizon flickered slightly. He raised his head and imitated the man's movements, watching quietly for a long time. The middle-aged man who had been searching on Mount Dibing all night turned his head and looked at Wang Xingxiao. The distance between the two was less than 1 meter. Wang Xingxiao couldn't feel his aura. But he could clearly see every expression on Wang Xingxiao's face. He narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling a little confused. Wang Xingxiao looked up at the palace in front of him and slowly opened his mouth. His voice was soft and slow. However, it exuded an aura of absolute majesty. Since when has Mount Dibing in Beihai become a place where others can come and go as they please? Everyone nearby was stunned for a moment. The elites of the internal security troops suddenly became nervous. They grabbed the guns in their hands and looked vigilant. The middle-aged man was obviously stunned for a moment. He didn't think Wang Xingxiao was bluffing. Otherwise, the location wouldn't be so coincidental. So, was he exposed? He thought about it and shook his head with a smile. The sword energy in the nothingness slowly shrank. The folds of space around the middle-aged man were instantly smoothed out. He looked a little tired but not haggard. He appeared in front of Wang Xingxiao and said with interest, "How did you find me?" Wang Xingxiao slowly turned around and looked at the gentle smiling face beside him. He said quietly, "Long time no see, Uncle Lin." Chapter 8:17. Crack. There was no uproar or chaos before Emperor Hall. In the face of the sudden change, the elites of the internal security forces of Mount Dibing showed a completely rare quality. All the people who saw this scene raised their guns in silence and pulled the bolts. The black muzzles were aimed directly at the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared, as if they could fire at any time. Uncle Lin. This title sounded really polite. No matter what the relationship between this man and Wang Xingxiao was, for today's Mount Dibbing, he was indeed a veritable uninvited guest. He came uninvited, sneaked around and hid his head but showed his tail. These words could all be applied to him. This was really an extremely embarrassing thing. Lin Fengting was a little embarrassed and even a little guilty. It was hard to describe the feeling of being discovered soon after he came with full confidence. He coughed dryly, looked at Wang Xingxiao in front of him and asked slowly, "How did you find me?" This was what he couldn't figure out the most. His talent in martial arts was indeed more terrifying than others had imagined, even slightly better than Li Guangtu's. In the chaos in Eastern Europe, he broke through the limit of the peak of the invincible realm and entered a new world. For today's dark world, he was really the top expert in the dark world. No one was his opponent. However, what many people didn't know was that breaking through the limit of the peak of the invincible realm was not his end. He was indeed only half a step away from the chosen one, but this half step was also big or small. He stood at the forefront of this half step and could vaguely see the end of martial arts. This feeling was very subtle. Not all people who broke through the limit of the peak of the invincible realm could stand at this height. This feeling, if really put into detail, was very much like the state when Wang Tianzong broke through the last step. However, Lin Fengting knew very well that he could only stop here. It was precisely because he could see the end of martial arts that he could clearly understand what he needed to pay in order to reach that step. Talent, luck, personal will, physical fitness, all of these were indispensable. But unfortunately, Lin Fengting almost did not have any of these conditions. To a martial artist, this was the saddest thing. Martial arts cultivation was originally a road to heaven, but not everyone could reach the end of this road. Every day, at every moment, someone would discover this fact. Maybe it was from the ice-condensing realm to the fire-flaming realm, or from the fire-flaming realm to the thunder-shocking realm, or from the thunder-shocking realm to the invincible realm. There were always some checkpoints in front of them, telling them that they could only go this far and could not go any further. Lin Fengting never thought that he would be stuck at this step. He was naturally disappointed, but he seemed to have been too lazy all his life, so even his disappointment was not too obvious. After adjusting his mood, he quickly stopped worrying about this matter. He could see the scenery at the finish line. But he couldn't cross it. If I can't, then I won't go. A stable state of mind allowed him to completely stabilize his new breakthrough. He stood at the peak of the dark world, and his ability to hide his sword energy was unparalleled in the world. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to detect his presence. So how did Wang Xingxiao find him? Wang Xingxiao shook his head and said nothing. He really couldn't find Lin Fengting. If the sword intent from the deep sea hadn't gone against the flow, maybe Lin Fengting wouldn't know that the other party had been here even if he turned Beihai upside down. However, these topics could not be talked about with Lin Fengting, and there was no need to talk about them. Beihai. The Lin clan. The two of them may have been close and reliable partners for many, many generations. But after the chaos in Eastern Europe ended, they should both know that even if they were not enemies, they were not friends. Lin Fengting waited for a while and seemed to understand something. He glanced at him and said with a chuckle, "I know that Mount Dibbing will not welcome me now. Xingxiao, I come here with no malice." "I believe you." Wang Xingxiao nodded and said briefly. He believed what Lin Fengting said was true. With Lin Fengting's current strength, if he went all out regardless of the consequences, he could bring unimaginable disaster to Mount Dibbing alone. He might not be as good as the mysterious chosen one, who almost destroyed Mount Dibbing with one sword strike. But unless the Wang family of Beihai was willing to die with him, there was really no other way. "Uncle Lin, what are you doing here?" Wang Xingxiao asked in a calm voice. When he was young, he liked Uncle Lin very much. He was not as serious and silent as his father. Instead, he was easy to get along with, so much so that for a period of time he even yearned to live in the Lin clan. However, everything in the past had become a fleeting cloud. Now when he saw this uncle, there was only defensiveness left in his heart. "Nothing. I just came to have a look," Lin Fengting said insincerely. He seemed to think of something and said with a smile, "How is it? Has Song Xi given birth? Is it a boy or a girl?" At the last moment when Li Tianlan swept across Beihai, he appeared in Mount Dibbing and knew the news that Song Xi was pregnant. It should have been a while since the little fellow was born. "It's a boy." Wang Xingxiao's face softened for a moment, then he shook his head and said, "But now they are not in Mount Dibbing. I can't let you see them." "What a pity." Lin Fengting sighed with some regret. Then there was silence. Neither of them spoke. Wang Xingxiao still looked at him, quiet, calm, without any emotion. Lin Fengting didn't know what to say. He didn't expect to be found here. Now he was caught. It seemed that whatever he said was wrong, but it didn't seem right to say nothing. Hide again? Lin Fengting recalled Wang Xingxiao's performance just now. Although he didn't know how the other party found him, he felt that if he hid again, Wang Xingxiao might not be able to find him again. But Lin Fengting couldn't be so shameless after all. Should he just leave? Thinking about it, he felt a little unwilling. I'm here to confirm something. Lin Fengting was silent for a long time before he spoke. This time he didn't hide anything and simply told the truth. What is it? Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows but his body tensed up. Have you seen it? Lin Fengting asked. Wang Xingxiao frowned and shook his head, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't have to hide anything. In fact, it's meaningless to hide. Let's not talk about our current relationship. At the beginning, Beihai and the Lin clan were inseparable. I can know the existence of that thing. How can you not know? Or, did you misunderstand the meaning of inseparable? Do you think Beihai can have that thing? Doesn't the Lin clan have it? Lin Fengting asked. Wang Xingxiao frowned more tightly. He glanced at Lin Fengting and said slowly, I didn't mean that, but I really don't know what you're talking about and I don't know why you think so. Human Emperor. Lin Fengting said calmly, a day ago I was still enjoying the spring in the southern hemisphere, but I learned the conditions you negotiated with Tianlan. You're willing to hand over the human emperor, so there's only one possibility. That thing has recovered. We have no choice but to hand over the human emperor. We do need the help of Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace, but this doesn't prove anything. Really? Lin Fengting asked blandly. The human emperor is the core foundation of the Wang family of Beihai, and in your current situation, you may not have to use such an important thing to make allies. This is not a choice. In my opinion, this is giving up. You can give up the human emperor only because the Wang family of Beihai has something better than the human emperor. Xingxiao, what are you worried about? Are you worried that I'll take it by force? Even if I'm really so despicable, that thing is here. Can I take it away? I'm not even sure if I'm a match for it. In that case, why are you so persistent? Just to have a look? Just to have a look. Lin Fengting nodded seriously. To see what it is that can really protect such a glorious family. Uncle Lin, you can go home and have a look. Wang Xingxiao stared at Lin Fengting's face. You just said that the Lin clan also has what the Wang family of Beihai has. That's why I came to have a look. I can't find that thing. He spread his hands. I can't find it in Beihai, nor can I find it in the Lin clan. It's been decades and I don't know where it is. I only know that it's within the scope of Worry-Free Villa. Who knows what it is? If you can't find it, can Beihai find it? Wang Xingxiao shook his head. I know you can't find it either, but that was before. But now you've given up on the human emperor, so I can only think that during this period of time, you've established some kind of connection with it. I want to see it and even want to know how to make it recover. This is very important for the Lin clan. Lin Fengting looked at Wang Xingxiao with a serious and peaceful expression. He really just wanted to have a look. And it seemed that he could only have a look. Wang Xingxiao shook his head. I can tell you that it does exist, but I can't give you other answers. He moved his body and said, Uncle Lin, if you don't want to have breakfast here, I'll arrange a car to take you down the mountain. Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes. He hesitated, changed the angle and tentatively said, What if I have to have a look? Wang Xingxiao's tightly frowned brows raised slightly for a moment. Does it make sense? He asked. If it doesn't want to see you, you can't find it. For it, neither the Lin clan nor Beihai is the place it wants to protect. It just wants to be complete. At this time it can't take any risks. Lin Fengting was silent. Wang Xingxiao smiled. He was a little tired and whispered, Uncle Lin, don't force me. I'm no match for you now. But since you're on Mount Dibbing, I'm not helpless. I just don't want to become that kind of monster. I don't want to kill you until that point. That thing shouldn't be used on you. Chapter 8:18. In Samsara Palace, Saint was the most idle. In Emperor Dong's palace, Saint was also the most idle. Different positions meant different responsibilities to be shouldered. Military counselor and Flaming Fire's original positions were to escort Li Tianlan's growth. One of them mastered force and the other mastered resources. Both of them could play an irreplaceable role in Li Tianlan's growth. But Saint was different. From the very beginning he was regarded by the master of Samsara Palace as Li Tianlan's future right-hand man. Now Li Tianlan was cultivating his sword in the desert prison. As his right-hand man, Saint had nothing to do other than guarding the wounded in the hospital. The power inside Mount Shu was now shifting. Nirvana sword was still transcendent. But Han Chongyang, the Yin and Yang sword master, had begun to appear more and more in public view and began to shoulder the responsibility of the head. For more than a year, Saint had been staying in the hospital and hadn't even returned to Mount Shu. He was withdrawing. Even Nirvana sword was put back in Mount Shu as he joined Emperor Dong's palace. That was the place where he grew up. His family, including his parents, were all from Mount Shu. That place had given him too many things. Joining Emperor Dong's palace was his promise and responsibility. But obviously, he didn't want to involve Mount Shu when he was already involved in the internal game of Zhongzhou State. The days of guarding the hospital were very ordinary. He was a wounded person and spent most of his time in his ward. He rarely appeared unless there were special circumstances. As for entertainment, he occasionally played poker with Gong Sun Chi and chess with Situ Tsangyue, so he didn't feel bored. But as the atmosphere between the parliament and Beihai kept changing, especially after he followed Wang Xingxiao to the Wang family of Beihai 3 days ago, the atmosphere of the whole hospital seemed to be changing. More and more people came to the hospital. Everyone had their own reasons to visit Saint and the wounded, but there was only one purpose: to test the specific attitude of Emperor Dong's palace. Saint received some people patiently, but within a day he shut himself in the ward again and refused to visit, saying that he was not feeling well. It's not good to hide like this. In the quiet ward, black and white were intertwined on the delicate chessboard. Situ Tsangyue put down the chess piece in her hand, looked at Saint and said with a faint smile, "Today a lot of people came. What can I do? Everyone wanted an attitude from me, but the problem was, how could there be an attitude in this matter?" Tianlan was still in the desert. Someone went to the desert to ask him. One by one they came to torment him. What was this? Bully the weak and fear the strong? Saint said grumpily. Whether before or now, although there was a gap in age between the two, there was no difference in status. No one would think that the status of the city governor of Sai City was much higher than that of the sword master of Mount Shu, especially Wei Kunlun, the first sword master. Now that he had entered the invincible realm, the difference in status between the two had been completely wiped out, and they were completely equal when communicating. Someone's gone. Situ Tsangyue smiled and said, "Didn't the president and the prime minister go?" Saint was silent for a while and shook his head, not knowing what to say. Has Tianlan really decided? Situ Tsangyue said, "Fully cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai?" Saint agreed and said frankly, "There is no good choice. Tianlan may think about the future of Emperor Dong's palace and nothing else. But in my opinion, if he accepts the conditions of the president and the prime minister, Kunlun City will inevitably fight back with all its strength. At that time the situation will be more chaotic. This choice is good for everyone." "A lot of people are waiting for you to say that," Situ Tsangyue said thoughtfully. "It will take some time. Emperor Dong's palace, the Giant Group, the Southeast Group, and the Wang family of Beihai all need some time to prepare." Saint shook his head. It was really not the time to show his attitude. Although he had shown some obvious inclinations when he went to the Wang family of Beihai with Wang Xingxiao, since he did not make it clear, Zhongzhou State would not take any drastic action. But even so, he paid a little price for going to the Wang family of Beihai. 3 days was not a long time, but a batch of funds originally planned to be secretly allocated to Xinyuan City was temporarily put on hold. It could not be said that Zhongzhou State was overly sensitive or petty. It was just a warning. Zhongzhou State was also using this reaction to show their determination. There was no doubt that once Emperor Dong's palace completely decided to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai, then Zhongzhou State would not hesitate to fully suppress Emperor Dong's palace. Such a reaction also made Saint secretly vigilant. At least at this time, he could not show the attitude of Emperor Dong's palace to the outside world. They might not have too much time, but the later they showed their attitude, the better. Every extra day meant one more day of preparation. At that time, they would not be struggling under the suppression of Zhongzhou State. Drag it on. Saint took a light breath and laughed at himself. When it can't be dragged on, life will be difficult. How long do you think it will last? Situ Tsangyue asked. Emperor Dong's palace, the Wang family of Beihai, and the parliament. The game was only an internal matter of Zhongzhou State. No matter how tragic it was, no one would really define the other party as an enemy. Now both sides of the game only needed a result. Whether the result was good or bad, as long as it appeared, it meant the end of the matter. After the game, the next step was naturally to compromise. After Emperor Dong's palace showed its attitude, the following days would indeed be very difficult. But as long as the result appeared and a new balance and conditions acceptable to all parties were reached, the assistance would continue. This itself was the condition of balance, and it could even be said to be the most important condition. Who knows? Saint shook his head. Maybe it will be very fast, maybe it will be very slow. I guess at least we have to wait until this time next year. You won't do anything this time? Situ Tsangyue was a little curious. Saint nodded and said calmly, Minister Wei Tianhang came to see me yesterday. Situ Tsangyue's eyes narrowed and became extremely focused. Wei Tianhang. He was a member of the Parliament of Zhongzhou State and the Deputy Minister of the Army Headquarters. He ranked below Dongqing Wudi and Yi Dongxing and was in charge of national defense. He was one of the leaders of the Prince Group who stood on the front stage now. In terms of blood relationship, he was Saint's eldest brother. They were brothers who were 13 years apart. However, the relationship between the two was not very good. To some extent, it could even be said to be bad. If Emperor Dong's palace cooperated with Beihai, the cooperation between the Giant Group and the Southeast Group would inevitably be closer. The army headquarters would also become one of the main battlefields of the game. At that time, Wei Tianhang would face the double pressure from Dongqing Wudi and Yi Dongxing. So it was completely understandable that he could not sit still and came here first. What did he say? Situ Tsangyue said slowly. He told me that if Emperor Dong's palace chose to stand by Mount Dibing, then this game would become a real war. He asked me if Emperor Dong's palace was ready to be defeated. Saint held the chess piece in his hand, expressionless. Situ Tsangyue sneered. How did you answer him? I don't need to answer anything, and I don't think he is in the mood to listen to me. Saint shook his head. There is nothing to answer. At this point, we can only move forward. If we don't win, we will die. Let's go all out. Chapter 8:19. Lin Fengting stayed in Mount Dibing for 3 consecutive days. Wang Xingxiao entertained him with good food and drinks and didn't insist on driving him away. The Lin clan and the Wang family of Beihai might not be friends now, but at least they were not enemies. Obviously, they didn't want to treat each other as enemies. Lin Fengting came to Mount Dibing uninvited, but since he was here, Wang Xingxiao, as a junior, naturally had to show due courtesy. Lin Fengting was arranged to stay in a palace not far from Emperor Hall. During the day, Wang Xingxiao accompanied him almost all the time. At night, a large number of elites of the internal security force faintly surrounded the palace. They didn't hide their defensive posture at all. It was clear that they hoped Lin Fengting would leave as soon as possible. Wang Xingxiao stayed in the stage of formidable person at night. The sword intent from the deep sea filled the stage of formidable person. He integrated with the sword intent and could clearly feel every corner of Mount Dibing, observing Lin Fengting's movements. Lin Fengting didn't intend to look for that thing. Although he didn't move, the dense sword energy was shuttling in every corner of the top of the mountain, starting from the palace where he lived. Wang Xingxiao could clearly feel the fine cracks caused by the opponent's sword energy tearing the space. But Lin Fengting never noticed the majestic sword energy on the stage of formidable person. Wang Xingxiao was calm and collected. In his perception, Lin Fengting had used sword qi to search every corner of Mount Dibing in the past 3 days, but he had found nothing. Lin Fengting was undoubtedly a person who abided by the rules. After his hidden whereabouts were exposed by Wang Xingxiao, he didn't hide any more on Mount Dibing. After making sure that he couldn't find the clue of that thing, Wang Xingxiao's mind gradually shifted from him to the internal purge. 3 days ago, Xianming, who controlled all the intelligence organizations of the Wang family of Beihai, officially accepted most of the elites of Jiangnan society in Beihai. Wang Xingxiao personally transferred Lu Shuanghua, the person in charge of Jiangnan society, to Beihai. A large number of intelligence experts dug deep inside Beihai, looking for all the clues. 2 days ago, Wang Xingxiao decided to tentatively attack 2 suspicious places in Beihai. One of the 2 places was empty. The other one, on the other hand, met with fierce resistance. Several swordsmen from East Island broke through the encirclement, and dozens of elites of the Beihai Corps were wounded. The fight was fierce and short. The swordsmen of East Island left the hiding place immediately and destroyed all the subsequent clues. The battle ended very quickly. However, this was the first battle that the major powers had clashed with the North Sea Legion after infiltrating the North Sea. After a long period of oppression and scheming, the first sparks of war had already begun to erupt in the increasingly turbulent North Sea. It was precisely because of this short war that it officially confirmed that several superpowers were indeed lurking in Beihai and plotting against Mount Dibing. The previous speculation had evidence in an instant, which meant that everything was on the right track. Wang Xingxiao threw in a massive amount of resources without hesitation. Xingzhou, Floating Island, Kanglin, Empress, Autumn Water, Tongtian, Lioli. The 7 cities and the entire province were like an inescapable net, trapping the elites of the major factions. All the forces in the North Sea were searching for them. When Lu Shuanghua hurried to the stage of formidable person, Wang Xingxiao had just finished a night of meditation and was about to invite Lin Fengting to breakfast. Seeing the enchantress coming up with the intelligence giant, he was slightly stunned and said slowly, "Uncle Lu, what's the matter?" "Patriarch." Lu Shuanghua nodded. His pace was fast, but his voice and expression were still calm. "I have some important discoveries here and the target is more important. I need your approval before I start." "Target?" Wang Xingxiao's pupils contracted. At this stage, the task of Xian Ming and Lu Shuanghua was to investigate some places where the enemy might be lurking. But Lu Shuanghua's words directly located the target. The target and the place were two completely different things. "Go ahead." Wang Xingxiao narrowed his eyes and said quietly, "Huangfu Renjia of the Huangfu family." Lu Shuanghua's tone was calm. "I can be sure that he has a very close relationship with Wang Xiaoyao. The relevant evidence is all here. The most important evidence is that, in our surveillance, my people accidentally found that Huangfu Renjia had contact with an intelligence officer of Jifeng Sword Training School. Coincidentally, this intelligence officer had participated in some activities in Zhongzhou State. His identity was secretly recorded by us." He handed a document in his hand to Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao lowered his head and quickly glanced through it. The information was all about some matters and data, including the transfer of some resources. There were also some money transfers and some photos. All of these showed that Huangfu Renjia and Wang Xiaoyao had a close relationship. And Huangfu Renjia's contact with the intelligence officer of Jifeng Sword Training School was the most direct evidence. Wang Xingxiao's expression was still calm, but his eyes were a little gloomy. Huangfu Renjia. He was the number 2 figure in the intelligence system of the Huangfu family. This identity was nothing in the whole North Sea, but inside the Huangfu family he was one of the high-level core. This meant that Wang Xiaoyao had reached into the 7 sword-holding families a long time ago. Huangfu Renjia was the first one. Would there be a second one? Or even a 100th one? "How much do you know about the situation?" Wang Xingxiao asked slowly. "At present we only have this clue. His identity is a bit special. He is a core member of the sword-holding family, so we can't act rashly. But if we can control him, we can at least take down 1/3 of the latent forces in Qiushui City. This can even be said to be our biggest harvest since the search. I'll take people to Qiushui City, ask the Huangfu family for him, catch him and kill him." The enchantress's voice was cold and cruel. Lu Shuanghua and Wang Xingxiao shook their heads at the same time. Wang Xingxiao noticed the other party's movement, suppressed his inner emotions and said with a smile, "Uncle Lu, what do you think? If you have anything to say, just say it. You are my father's friend and my elder, so you don't have to worry about anything." Lu Shuanghua raised her head and took a deep look at Wang Xingxiao. After a moment of hesitation she said, "These places may not necessarily exist in isolation. If Wang Xiaoyao runs a network inside Beihai, then Huangfu Renjia should be a relatively important figure. This person should even play a very important role in helping several superpowers lurk. I suggest we monitor him secretly first and then slowly. There's no time." Wang Xingxiao shook his head. "Of course this is the best way, but Zhongzhou State may not give us too much time. Uncle Lu, what I need is to deter the major forces and alert them. First, we need to destroy some of their forces and disrupt their plans. Huangfu Renjia is a very suitable candidate. But he is a member of the Huangfu family." Lu Shuanghua lowered his head, his eyes flashing, and said in a low voice, "Patriarch, are you sure that the 7 sword-holding families are on our side?" Chapter 820. To this day would the 7 families still stand on Wang Xingxiao's side? This question was very heart-wrenching, but it was also very realistic. The significance of the existence of the sword-holding families was to help Mount Dibing stabilize the situation in Beihai. It was necessary to unite against foreign enemies. But the biggest problem facing Mount Dibing now was not foreign aggression, but internal worries. It was Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Qinglei. Wang Xiaoyao was now an expert of the invincible realm. After Dijiang was expelled and Wang Tianzong disappeared, he was now the only expert of the invincible realm in the Wang family of Beihai. He was only in his 30s this year, and his future was also worth looking forward to. Moreover, he also controlled tens of thousands of elite troops of the Beihai Corps in Snow Country, and even dominated the dark world of Snow Country today. Needless to say, Wang Qinglei, as a person who was determined to rush to the #1 position in 6 years, did not need to prove any strength at all. The two together might not be able to overthrow Wang Tianzong. But Wang Tianzong was now missing. Objectively speaking, the appearance of Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Qinglei had the capital to shake the minds of many people. How would the 7 sword-holding families choose? Huangfu Renjia was one of the high-level members of the Huangfu family. If he could be roped in by Wang Xiaoyao, would other people in the Huangfu family be roped in by Wang Xiaoyao? And how many people in other families had Wang Xiaoyao roped in? Wang Xingxiao was silent. The enchantress trembled slightly for a moment. Thinking of a possibility, she suddenly shuddered, and then her whole body exuded an even colder killing intent. Nurturing a tiger invites disaster. At this time, no one could be sure what Wang Xiaoyao, who had been unguarded for so many years, had done in secret, and what a terrifying team he had cultivated. Although this possibility was very small, no one could deny that Wang Xiaoyao might have roped in a part of the power that was enough to compete with Mount Dibbing. Make an appointment with the patriarch of the Huangfu family for me. Wang Xingxiao was silent for a long time and then said faintly, I will wait for him for lunch today. Patriarch. Lu Shuanghua wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. It's okay. Wang Xingxiao smiled and said, the patriarchs of the 7 sword-holding families can still be trusted at this stage. My father has not died yet. Even if some people don't know the situation, these patriarchs should always know that not all gambles can be won. Lu Shuanghua hesitated for a moment before nodding. I'll arrange it right away. Wang Xingxiao nodded, looked at him, smiled and said softly, the work efficiency of Jiangnan Road is good. Huangfu Renjia needs to be taken care of. As for the specific measures, I will discuss it with clan leader Huangfu. I'll let you know after we talk. All right. Lu Shuanghua agreed without hesitation. Are there enough people? If it's not enough, I can send you more people. Wang Xingxiao casually asked. I'm still too busy for the time being. However, regarding the matters of the battle, I'll need the patriarch's help. Lu Shuanghua said. Wang Xingxiao thought for a moment and said, I'll arrange for someone to fight. In addition, I'll adjust your authority later. North of Kanglin, the authority of the members of Jiangnan society will be raised by 1 level. He reached out and pressed his hand on Lu Shuanghua's shoulder. He leaned forward slightly and said with a serious look in his eyes, no matter what, dig them out. Lu Shuanghua took a deep breath and nodded solemnly. Wang Xingxiao still wanted to say something but his phone suddenly rang. He took out his phone and answered it. A respectful voice sounded on the phone, Your Highness, Mr. Lin said he's leaving. Wang Xingxiao was stunned and said, I'll be there right away. Lin Fengting had been here for 3 days without finding anything. According to his character, he naturally wouldn't stay long. Clan leader, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to Qiushui. I'll go with Huangfu Renjia myself. Lu Shuanghua said. Okay. Wang Xingxiao walked down the stage, a formidable person with him, and shook hands with him. Thank you. Lu Shuanghua said no more. He came and left in a hurry. Wang Xingxiao didn't turn around until his figure completely disappeared and walked to Lin Fengting's palace. Lin Fengting didn't have any luggage, so he didn't need to pack anything. When Wang Xingxiao walked into the palace, he was sitting on the sofa, quietly drinking tea alone. Seeing Wang Xingxiao come in, he nodded and said gently, Sorry to disturb you these days. Uncle, you're welcome. Wang Xingxiao smiled and asked knowingly, Uncle, did you find anything? No. Lin Fengting said with a faint smile, I tried to find it again, but it obviously didn't want to see me. Wang Xingxiao thought that it didn't have the mood to talk to him now, but he shook his head and said, I'll arrange a car to send you down the mountain. Lin Fengting put down the teacup, got up and walked out of the door. Wang Xingxiao followed him silently. How did you find me that day? Lin Fengting suddenly asked. Did it tell you? Wang Xingxiao shook his head and said nothing. Shaking his head meant many things. So did silence. So Lin Fengting didn't understand. He just suddenly laughed. If I hide myself again, can you still find me? Wang Xingxiao's expression didn't change. He said flatly, Uncle, why don't you have a try? Because this is Mount Dibbing. Lin Fengting said softly. His tone was a little emotional. Then let's thank each other. Wang Xingxiao said slowly. This sentence was a little inexplicable. But Lin Fengting could understand. He nodded. What's your next plan? Wang Xingxiao said with a smile. Where are you going to have fun? Let's take a look in Beihai. Lin Fengting said, since I'm here I can't come here in vain. I'll take another look at the old scenery and then walk around Zhongzhou State. When it's time I'll go to the desert and then go home. Lin Fengting was a little absent-minded and shook his head. I'm in my 50s. If I walk around the world again I'll leave. Wang Xingxiao didn't say anything about this. I know what you're suspecting, but your suspicion is unnecessary. I really didn't find that thing in the Lin clan, so I wanted to come and have a look. But since you don't agree, then forget it. Lin Fengting continued. Uncle, you can go home and look for it slowly. You'll find it, Wang Xingxiao said. Lin Fengting shook his head with a smile. Suddenly he reached out and rubbed Wang Xingxiao's hair. You have your worries and I have mine. Forget it, I don't care. I won't see you. Wang Xingxiao laughed. Carefree is the greatest freedom. Lin Fengting nodded. A black car appeared in the distance. Before the car arrived, he took a deep look at Wang Xingxiao and said slowly, I don't know if I'm overthinking it. You gave the coldness of 9 states to Tianlan. I'm afraid you didn't have good intentions from the beginning, did you? Are you plotting against Shenyuan Feng and the 13th floor? Wang Xingxiao's eyes were calm. He said quietly, it was Tianlan's idea to give me the coldness of 9 states. This was our deal and I fulfilled the contract. What he said was the truth. Sounded like it. In fact, he didn't say anything when he thought about it carefully. It was a complete nonsense. Lin Fengting smiled. It sounds like it's true. I also hope that it's that simple. But if it's really like what I said. The car stopped beside him. He paused and said slowly, I don't agree with this. If there is such a day, Tianlan and I will wait for you in Warefree Villa, or you will wait for us on Mount Dibbing. Chapter 821. It was early autumn again. It was the rain of early autumn again. The slightly messy rain fell on the streets and alleys of the city, falling on the neon lights lit in the evening, bringing a dense mist. The rain was lazy and casual. The traffic was moving and stopping at the red light, leisurely and quiet. Downstairs, the people who got off work held umbrellas and walked on the rain-soaked stone road, laughing and talking. Young couples walked hand in hand to the nearby snack street, and colleagues discussed what movies to watch after dinner. In front of the small supermarket across the street, the owner of the supermarket held a cigarette and chatted casually with his neighbors in the rain. The students who had just finished school ran across the sidewalk laughing and getting farther and farther away. Qingzhou had always been a leisurely and almost undisciplined city. The extremely slow pace of life allowed everyone living here to integrate into the city, unlike Yuzhou or Huading. There were tens of millions of people in the vast sea of people, and most of them were passers-by in the city. Simple, leisurely, contented, and carefree. After a day's work, before leaving, she always liked to stand in front of the window and look at the scenery outside. Every time she saw it, she would always think of what her father had said to her and her brother. Being carefree was the greatest freedom. She didn't understand it back then and she still didn't understand it now. But she gradually fell in love with the current life, the current city, and the current job. It was raining outside the window. Cheerful footsteps rang in the corridor outside the office. She was in a good mood. After drinking the coffee in the cup, she rinsed the coffee cup and was cleaning up the office when there was a knock on the door. She said, "Come in," in a soft and pleasant voice. Several young girls who had just started working came in with a smile. "Manager, do you have time in the evening? My relative opened a restaurant. It's very clean and tastes good. I'd like to invite you to have a try." The leading girl said with a chuckle, and her eyes were very intimate. She smiled apologetically and shook her head. "Not today." "Oh, where's the restaurant?" "Tomorrow is the weekend. Let's go at noon. How about I treat you?" "I see. Well, I wanted to invite you to watch a movie with me. There's a new movie that's very good recently." The girl was a little regretful. They liked this manager very much. She was very beautiful, not just any kind of beauty, but the kind of beauty that even people of the same sex couldn't have the slightest bit of jealousy. Such beauty didn't have any aggressiveness. Gentle, generous, and demure, everyone in the company liked this easygoing administrative manager. Compared with the timid male colleagues, most of the women in the company liked to chat with her. Some girls who had just graduated from school in the same department even unconsciously imitated her every word and action. Maybe next time. I really have something this time. She smiled gently and picked up the small lady's handbag on the table. A low-end lady's handbag that cost 1 or 200 yuan looked a little old, but in her hands, it didn't look cheap at all. All right. The girls pouted and then laughed. Manager, we're leaving. Let's watch a movie together next time. What movie? A voice came from outside the office. She was stunned, then smiled and said, President He. The girls lowered their voices. Hello, President He. Dressed in a business suit with her long hair tied up, He Shui walked in and smiled. Are there any good movies recently? Next, during the shift, the president of the Susui group looked much softer, but facing the boss, the girls in the administrative department were still a little nervous. Oh, there's one. It's a sci-fi movie. It's very good. He Shui nodded and didn't say anything else. The girls stuck out their tongues, secretly waved at the manager in the office and rushed out. Look, you scared them all. Standing in the office, she tilted her head and chuckled. What? I'm very approachable today, okay? He Shui frowned and waved his hand. When he was with her, she seemed a lot younger. She smiled and glanced at the thing in He Shui's hand. It was a very delicate small gift box. This is? She slightly raised her eyebrows. A gift. He Shui smiled and said, a gift for Tide. Thank you. She smiled and didn't say anything. The friendship between them had been slowly cultivated over a year. At first, she was just an ordinary clerk and he was the president. When she first came to Susui for an interview, it was He Shui who accompanied her through all the procedures. On the first day of work, it was He Shui who brought her to the company. Then, she was transferred to the administrative department, deputy manager, and they became friends or even best friends. She once asked He Shui why he treated her so well. And He Shui's answer was absolutely convincing. Because of her looks. She often thought that the gradual recovery of her mood might be mostly because of Tide, and a small part of it might be because of this best friend in front of her, who was like a sister and a little sister at the same time. She reached out to take the gift. However, He Shui hid the gift behind his back. No, this isn't a gift for you. This is for little Tide. Gifts have to be given personally to show sincerity. Let's go freeload. I want to go to your house to freeload. She glared at him and waved the small bag in her hand. Then let's go. What do you want for dinner? I have food in my car. Let's go in my car. I won't go back tonight. He Shui followed beside her, his voice very lively because of the joy. She let out a nonchalant It's still the same thing as last time. The two of them got into He Shui's car. He Shui started the car and said with a smile, Miss Li Mutong, I'm once again inviting you to move to a new house. It's great that you move in with us. My house is very big and my parents are very welcoming of you. You can go to work during the day and little Tide can be left at home. There will be someone to take care of her. I have a big family and I don't need a pair of chopsticks. No need. Li Mutong shook her head. It's too troublesome. Besides, I really like where I live now. Although it's a little small, it's very comfortable. What about little Tide? He Shui glanced at her. I'm going to hire an aunt. Li Mutong smiled. There was a warm and dazzling glow on her young and beautiful face. An aunt can take care of little Tide during the day. I've installed a surveillance camera. She's a very good person and she treats little Tide very well. I'm very relieved. I'm really defeated by you. How can an outsider take care of his own people better than an outsider? Li Mutong still shook her head and insisted. An aunt is a professional. Yi Shui sighed and stopped the topic. There was a moment of silence in the car. Oh right. Yi Shui suddenly said, do you have any plans for the National Day holiday? Li Mutong thought for a moment. I'll just stay at home and accompany Tide. Isn't that good? What era are we in? Yi Shui shook his head. We should go out for a walk. We're in Zhejiang, right? I wanted to go a few years ago but I didn't have the chance. Usually when I visit my clients I'm always in a hurry so I haven't had the chance to have a good look. Let's go together. Li Mutong shook her head, and her eyes were in a trance. She said absent-mindedly, I still like Qingzhou. Besides, Tide is still young. It's not suitable for her to go out. He Shui thought about it seriously and said softly, that's true. Children are troublesome but they are also very cute. Sometimes I envy you but, she shook her head. Let me be little Tide's godmother. You don't even have a child yourself. Li Mutong laughed. What's wrong with that? He Shui shook her head and her face dimmed for a moment. She was already 34 years old this year. She had a failed marriage, but she did not have a child. She used to think that she did not like children, but since she met Little Tide, she had changed her mind unconsciously. The black Audi shuttled through the autumn rain, and finally drove into an ordinary residential area in Qingzhou. Yi Shui and Li Mutong were busy moving the food from the trunk into the car. In the house that was less than 100 square meters, a kind-looking aunt who looked about 50 years old was slowly walking in the living room with a small baby in her arms. When she saw Li Mutong, she smiled and nodded. Tai just woke up from wetting the bed. She didn't have time to wash up. Let's put her to sleep first. Let me do it. Li Mutong changed her clothes, washed her hands and carefully held the baby in her arms. The little baby opened his eyes and wrapped one of his fingers. When he saw his mother, he grinned. At this moment, Li Mutong's heart seemed to have completely melted, and she looked even more gentle. She took out the baby's finger, unbuttoned her pajamas with one hand, and fed the baby naturally. Yi Shui stayed by Li Mutong's side and carefully touched the baby's face with her finger. She said softly, "So beautiful. When she grows up, she will definitely be as charming as you." Li Mutong rolled her eyes at Yi Shui and did not say anything. Yi Shui looked at the scene quietly, and her eyes were a little complicated. When she first interviewed Li Mutong, she had asked her if she had a boyfriend and if she was married. Li Mutong said that she was not married and she did not have a boyfriend. She thought that she was pregnant at that time, but she did not know it. The baby was born about 3 months ago. The girl's name was Li Chaoshi. Yi Shui also asked her who the father of the baby was, but she did not get an answer. Every time she mentioned the father, Li Mutong would remain silent. At that time, her red lips would be tightly pursed, and she looked a little stubborn, a little wronged, a little confused, but most of all she was strong. She did not mention her family, and she did not mention the father of the baby. Yi Shui had many guesses. Maybe she had a complete fallout with her family because of that bastard man? Or that bastard man dumped Li Mutong and found someone else. But what kind of man would abandon a girl like Li Mutong? Was he blind? Was he her university classmate? Or was Li Mutong cheated? There was no answer, because she had never said anything. Yi Shui looked at her best friend who was lowering her head to feed the baby. She gritted her teeth and thought to herself, "Don't let me know who the father of that bastard man is, or I will teach him a lesson." Chapter 822. It was snowing in Eastern Europe. The night was long and it was snowing heavily. Jiang Shangyu liked rain and didn't like snow. It could even be said that he hated snowflakes very much. He didn't like the snow covering the sky and the earth, the cold and the darkness. Coincidentally, the things he didn't like were all in Eastern Europe. And he was in Eastern Europe now. Autumn gradually passed, and Reki City had entered the everlasting night. The darkness existed for 24 hours, accompanied by snowflakes and icy wind. It was bone-chilling. Therefore, Jiang Shangyu rarely left the station of the Snowdance Corps. But once he left, he often had to walk for a long time. He was still the vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps. After Li Tianlan resigned from the rank of marshal and the position of commander of the Snowdance Corps, he could be said to be the nominal supreme leader here. The parliament of Zhongzhou State had secretly discussed the Snowdance Corps many times. Someone even proposed to let Jiang Shangyu directly become the commander of the Snowdance Corps and grant him the rank of marshal. However, Dongqing Wudi had been delaying it. Every time he studied it. After nearly 2 years, he still didn't give a clear result. During this period, some of the middle and high-level officers of the Snowdance Corps had been slightly adjusted. Although it didn't affect the overall situation, the officers who were transferred there were basically figures who could help Jiang Shangyu stabilize his position in the Corps. Obviously, more than one giant hoped that Jiang Shangyu could do something in Eastern Europe in the Snowdance Corps. But for nearly 2 years, Jiang Shangyu really did nothing. He stayed in the Snowdance Corps as if he didn't exist at all. He didn't express any opinions at the Corps meeting. Every meeting, he drank a cup of tea until the end of the meeting. Silence was golden. He didn't intervene in the specific affairs of Reki City or even the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. Since the chaos in Eastern Europe, for nearly 2 years, the relationship between the giants of the giant group and the 5 countries in Eastern Europe had become closer. With the full cooperation of the Flourishing Age Fund, Emperor Dong's palace had completed the shareholding of the giants of the 5 countries in Eastern Europe during this period. Shenyuan City was developing rapidly, and Emperor Dong's palace had begun to take root here quickly. Almost every day, a large amount of money gathered toward Emperor Dong's palace. Jiang Shangyu had been watching silently, keeping his composure and never expressing any opinions. Within the corps as Jiang Shangyu's secretary, Lu Dongyang increasingly couldn't understand what Jiang Shangyu was doing. He could be said to be the closest person to Jiang Shangyu in the entire corps. But after getting along with him for more than a year, he had never understood what Jiang Shangyu was thinking. He wasn't pretending. He really didn't care about everything in Eastern Europe, or rather he didn't care about it at all. Scramble for power? Attack Li Qianlan's team? Become the parliament's bargaining chip in exchange for more support? He really didn't think about it, or rather he didn't care. Every once in a while Jiang Shangyu would leave the army station. Asking for leave was symbolic. Every time Dongqing Wudi approved the documents for leave, it was as timely as sending a text message. Jiang Shangyu really hated the cold and night here, so every time he left he would look better after coming back. As a major officer of Zhongzhou State, after Lu Dongyang came to the Snowdance Corps, he had no other feeling of being close to a big shot except for the promotion of his military rank. As the secretary of the vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps, what he did most on weekdays was to take care of Jiang Shangyu's food and drink. Internal affairs of the army? The officers of the legion controlled by Dongqing Wudi and Li Tianlan did not take Jiang Shangyu seriously. Jiang Shangyu didn't take them seriously. Therefore Lu Dongyang, who was stuck in the middle, became more and more confused. Intensive knocking sounds kept ringing in the office of the vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps. When Lu Dongyang walked into the conference room with the documents, Jiang Shangyu was staring intently at the screen in front of him, which was originally used for the meeting, and the controller in his hand was clicking. The little man on the screen killed one monster after another with sharp movements. His movements were smooth and pleasing to the eye. Jiang Shangyu was humming happily and playing games. He didn't notice that there was one more person in the office. General. Lu Dongyang felt a little uncomfortable. Every time he saw his immediate boss abandon himself, he felt even more uncomfortable. Ah, Dongyang is here. Let's do it. There's a controller next to him. Let's play together. Let me tell you, I defeated the boss of the last level. I studied it all night last night. It was comfortable. Watch me perform this level. F***CK. Jiang Shangyu's complacent smile suddenly changed and he screamed. Lu Dongyang turned his head numbly and glanced at it. The colorful screen had become black and white. The fierce and domineering character in the game had been lying on the ground. Lu Dongyang shook his head and handed over the document in his hand. General, this is the document from the parliament. Take a look. Okay. Jiang Shangyu responded, took the document and put it aside. The next moment he picked up a guide and muttered, "What kind of skill is it? So powerful. I almost have divine equipment, but I was still killed in seconds?" General. The corner of Lu Dongyang's mouth twitched and he emphasized, "This is a document from the parliament of Zhongzhou State." Nonsense. Jiang Shangyu held the guide in his hand. This is obviously a past secret book. Lu Dongyang took a deep breath and said softly, "The parliament asks you to return to Yuzhou to report on your work and discuss the future allocation of officers of the Snowdance Corps." Reset. Jiang Shangyu paused while flipping through the secret book and narrowed his eyes. Lu Dongyang's eyes flashed with excitement. "General, I think our chance has come." "Yes." Jiang Shangyu nodded casually. "Different from you, I think we're going to die." Lu Dongyang's face changed and he was a little surprised and doubtful. "General, it's been less than 2 years and you can't hold back?" Jiang Shangyu shook his head. "The parliament is powerful, but no matter what, it can't go too far. Isn't Beihai busy enough? Do you want to get Emperor Dong's palace involved again?" He turned off the game, turned on the TV, and adjusted the playback of the news broadcast of Zhongzhou State. On the news, on different occasions, Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing spoke at the same time, in unison, emphasizing the importance of unity and the local parliament to maintain a high degree of consistency with the parliament of Zhongzhou State. Their words were full of mystery. Jiang Shangyu pointed to the TV. "Look at their faces." Lu Dongyang was a little stunned. "Move against Beihai." In the beginning it was just moving against Beihai. Now the spearhead has pointed directly at Mount Dibing. Beihai is the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai, and Mount Dibing is their lifeline. But it's nothing. Zhongzhou State has the right to do so. What about here? Let me go back to Yuzhou to report on my work and study personnel? What is this place? The reason why Xinyuan City can develop so fast in Tianan is that the capital here is crucial, or even the most important thing. This is Li Tianlan's lifeline. I really can't figure it out. They have one foot on the bottom line of Beihai and the other on Li Tianlan. Do they really think they can trample these two forces to death? If they can't be trampled to death, the next step is to rebound. He pointed to the TV screen. These two, I can only see greed on their faces. I can be sure that at least one of them has a psychological problem. On the surface, the parliament occupies the highest point of the overall interests of Zhongzhou state. But Li Tianlan, Mount Dibing, the Southeast Group and the Giant Group, are they really weaker than the Academy and the Prince Group? Li Tianlan can destroy the Qi family for Xinyuan City. Are they not sober enough to instigate me to stand out? He looked at the news on the screen and tooted. Who the hell is it? Do they think I have a long life? Dong Yang. He glanced at the secretary beside him and smiled. You've worked hard during this period, but you should work harder next. He touched his face. In the cold air, his face was abnormally pale. I'm not feeling well. Send a document to the army headquarters in my name. I'll apply for a vacation. It'll take about 2 years. That's all. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.